OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Very good morning to you. Welcome along to Wednesday morning's OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show on Off the Ball. That music means only one thing. It's World Cup Day. It's the Republic of Ireland versus Canada. It's do or die, and we're all in our jerseys. Adrian Barry has made his return. Good morning, Adrian.
Especially for the occasion. Good morning, Shane.
Only for the day that's in it. And good morning, Colm. How are things?
Hi, Shane.
How are you? How are
you
things?
Well? I missed you. Missed you yesterday afternoon.
I did miss you as well. Yeah. It actually looks well. I was here, by the way. I just went home early to do a couple of interviews.
You don't need to explain yourself, Shane. It's fine. It's like, Jesus, it feels like a sort of a slightly weird conversation that you should be having off air.
I love the fact that the white is in the middle here.
It worked out well, didn't it?
It's the pick of the three. I'm not going to lie. It's the pick of the three.
It's a nice jersey.
Explain the background maybe behind the jerseys.
Well, it's David Moyles' jersey that he wore when he captained Ireland against Wales in Cardiff on the 9th of October 2017, which was, if everyone remembers, the night that James McLean rocketed in with his right foot, bottom right corner, it got Ireland the playoff against Denmark for the 2018 World Cup, which was a disaster. But that night was the zenith of the previous era. So this jersey, obviously here in studio there in the back behind the camera, and Moyles was in here himself a couple of years ago, left it here. So I texted him this morning, do you mind if I wear this?
Was it not that John was in, and because I was in contact with him around then, and I said, here, listen, have you any old thing that you might send us in? Expecting to know, as he was leaving, expected to never hear from him again. And about 3 days later, a package arrives in with boots and the jersey, and like he had been through the garage to pick out the best stuff. Was that not how it happened?
For people who are just listening, I also have the boots that David Moyles wore.
You were about to name them there, and then you found yourself sort of out of your depth.
No, I just only have one boot, so I didn't know whether to
surprised, yeah. They're steel. They're a hybrid of steel and
rugby boot, aren't they?
They are a bit of like a rugby boot.
Mike, they're like a rugby boot.
And of course, like the background to the jersey being that yourself, and as you've said occasionally on the show, yourself and David Moyles were best friends growing up.
We grew up together and in the same estate. We say park in Cork. Do you say park in Monaghan? As a housing estate, we call it the park.
A housing park?
Yeah, we say like what park?
Housing estate in Monaghan.
What park? He's like, what park?
Close to estates. No, we call it housing estate.
I think it's Cork thing, yeah. So anyway, we grew up in the same.
Call it housing estate.
We call it housing estate.
We grew up in the same estate, so we play football together. Yeah,
similar age.
Yeah, a few months.
That's it.
Apart, yeah,
best buds.
Yeah,
right.
And
you feel like is he? What sort of size is he compared to you? Would you be similar? Because I would have had him as a much bigger gentleman.
He'd be taller. Yeah, but he's probably slightly bigger. But he
fits the jersey out well, doesn't he? Like he's.
You see, this is the advantage.
Well, it's a long time since, like.
So I've obviously gone for, and apologies, Kev, I haven't texted Kevin Kilbane. Unlike yourself, I haven't asked for permission to wear this. But as you'll see, Kevin Kilbane.
You text him to ask him.
Yeah, I told you that a second ago. Go on, sorry.
Era versus France, 14th of November 09. I think that's the difference in 8 years, even in international jerseys. The sizes were. This is more of a.
That's a bad one.
Even the players looked kind of baggy wearing it.
Yeah, I just.
Well, Kilbane always like that sort of Lee Sharp, sort of loose situation.
Loose
anyway,
fit.
It worked on Kev. I hate that colour green. I wasn't mad about that jersey, but it's good to wear. It's poignant to wear it because Kev's on the show today.
It's not a nice jersey.
It's not a nice jersey, no?
No, I don't think so. No, the collar is weird.
It's over time. The passage of time has made me like it a little bit more.
And Shane asked us beforehand, who does this jersey remind you of, or was it yourself? And I said Stephen Ireland in his 6 caps. I think that was the jersey he wore.
Let us know in the comments, the YouTube comments, like aside from the number 3 obviously, which is
Clinton probably actually.
Who does the jersey remind you of? Is Clinton Morrison?
Yeah.
I said Andy O'Brien, but Andy O'Brien is maybe a previous one. A previous one.
It was a weird one. And I'm going for the John Giles look, of course.
Oh yeah.
A John Giles OG.
Yeah. You know his stuff.
Those jerseys.
Yeah.
Nice jersey, yeah.
Exciting stuff, lads, because if we draw against Canada, it's not the end of the world, potentially, but a defeat is a disaster.
We need to play for a win today,
This is the last time we can hype. We need to win.
Do we need to play for a win? That is the question of the day.
Well, look, we'll be with Kathleen in a few minutes from Perth, and Kathleen was talking about on the World Cup show with Sinead O'Carroll and Will O'Callaghan yesterday about the likelihood and their predictions, and I think Kathleen, not to speak on her behalf too much, is hoping for a 2-1, but is a bit more where
are we going to get 2 goals from? Not to be pessimistic.
Set pieces. Look, like
we always say that
it took 70 minutes for us to get our first corner against Australia, and I think we ended up with a half a dozen, and 2 of those corners nearly went directly in. So McCabe and Connolly's delivery, fantastic. So two of those 6 could have easily gone in.
You have to remember the quality of opposition you're playing against as well. But
they're the same. They're defensively minded.
I do think that an expectation, your desire for us to go and sort of score a few goals and to go gung-ho to win the game versus Vera Pauw's approach, they're going to be different things. Like, we've been watching the team for long enough now to know that she's never going to go throw caution to the wind here. She didn't throw caution to the wind in the opening game against Australia, when a lot of people were saying, should we get Amber Barrett on? Possibly even that she's looking at the goal difference going, actually 1-0 is not the end of the world here. If we hold on to this, 2-0 could see us out, 1-0 in the end actually might see us through. So I wouldn't be expecting her to go gung-ho for this. And I think a draw is not a bad result. A draw is a very good result. A very good result today.
And then Australia win by 2 goals against Nigeria tomorrow.
Preferably. Let's get Australia to go and blitz the group and walk through as group winners, and then do us a favour against Canada in the last game. And then if we can manage a draw today, and then we end up in a position where we have to beat Nigeria in the last round of games to go through, and I think that's an ideal scenario. I take that. If you're offering me that now in 5 hours' time, I'd take it.
I'm more nervous for this game than I was for the opening game. The opening game felt like an event.
It was an event, yeah, definitely.
This feels like a tournament, like a football match that has actual jeopardy.
I think you're right. Even though it's only 6 days ago, it's kind of a memory already. You were, Shane, you were covering the All-Ireland hurling final build-up for us, and you were in the Quaid household, weren't you?
It was on the
and watched it there. That's an amazing memory, in Limerick, to watch the game there.
Very random.
And then present the show the next day, talking about it. So no, last Thursday really felt like something, and Kathleen gave this amazing, rousing speech just outside Stadium Australia, and it was just incredible. But it was that good.
Wow.
And it was really it was one of those days where it's genuinely a privilege, to actually be on air and talk about it. Whereas I think I agree with you completely. Today feels way more like a football match. No, it's just this is Jeopardy here. We need to get our business
I also think that's partly because we've shown now that we can live with that. We weren't blitzed out of it. We were possibly unfortunate in some regards not to get a draw out of it. I don't think there's too many people saying we should have won the game, but we are happy in this company. There's a breath now. We're okay.
And it's a 20,500 seater stadium as opposed to 80. It's going to be majority Irish fans as opposed to Canadian. There are a couple of things away from the football playing into our hands.
Totally.
Obviously the injury concerns to Louise Quinn and Heather Payne.
Yeah, Payne's a big one, isn't it? Because who's going to play on the right side if Payne doesn't? And that could mean a cabinet reshuffle, and also is the big question, is Abby Larkin going to start and Marissa Shiva not? But also on the other side, going back to this pure football aspect of it, Canada are going to have Jessie Fleming back, the creator, the Chelsea wonder, and that could be a big problem. But Canada are 7th in the world, reigning Olympic champions. Their defence are star-studded in terms of the clubs that they represent versus the Irish contingent. But it's not well in Canada. The federation's approach to the team is woeful. Kev again goes into detail about it later on, and there is a chance here. There is really a chance. A bit like last week when Sam Kerr was ruled out through the calf injury, there was a chance there, and we nearly got a point. And it's not like Canada are complete world beaters here, and that's, I suppose, why the real nerves are there, and the trepidation is that there's no reason why Ireland couldn't get a result here. The thing with Canada is, you could argue that they're a higher octane version of this Irish setup, so defensively minded, very, very solid, hard to break down, don't score an awful lot of goals themselves, which the stats show for the last number of games. So are they just a better version of Ireland? That's the question.
I'm almost concerned because Canada were unimpressive in the first game. Surely a team of that calibre can't do it twice in a row. Maybe it does happen. Maybe Canada are just off at the moment.
But they, I think we were talking about yesterday, it's like the French men's team in 2010 World Cup, where they had a lot of talent, but all was not well. There was disharmony in the group.
World Cups where you make a bad start, like it's not unknown that teams grow into it, but at the same time, like it's not like even like something like a Six Nations or like a tournament where you have a bit of time between. Like they're pretty bloody quick succession, and if there's any doubts start creeping into the camp about where you're going.
Now, in fairness, Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia in the Men's World Cup last November in the first game,
and then it happened.
But I don't think Canada are in that league of that Argentina side, you know. So that's why I think there's a lot of fear of it. What do you think is going to happen today, result wise? I daren't even think about it.
I'm going with my heart today, whereas I was going with the head very much in advance of the Australia game. I was very negative before the Australian game. Today, I think we can nick a 1-0 win.
Sound like Gianni Infantino there. I thought you were going to.
I think that's an emotional call.
It possibly is.
Like on paper, you'd have to say that the likelihood is that we're not going to get anything out of this game. But like I said, I think that has slightly gone out the window a little bit just in the evidence of the first game. I think the players are increasingly acutely aware of our inability of scoring goals, right?
Yeah.
And you're not saying that for a second that they need reminding the fact that is it 1 goal in 5 of the last 6 games, whatever it is. They'll need no reminder of that. And it's not like they don't have a desire to score the goals. But I do think that I think there's a possibility we can nick something today. I'm going to go for 1-1.
1-1, yeah. You see, and
I take that.
Well, I take your arm off for 1-1.
1-1.
In Canada's last 13 meetings with European teams, they haven't scored more than once. That's all I'm saying.
That's like what the Stan used to say, we don't play well in May or whatever it was. Like,
yeah.
Look, I don't know. It's not.
Solly Marsh hadn't scored in March.
There's no. Oh yeah, I remember that. That was the set. There's no real reference point here. Like the only meeting of these two sides is in the 2014 Cyprus Cup.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah.
So you remember it. So it's very hard to judge. But I don't think there's too much to fear from Canada. Now you have Christine Sinclair, who's trying to break the record of scoring in the most number of World Cups in a row, 6 World Cups.
I know
the Brazilian Martha as well is also trying to get that in this tournament.
Did I say it's the 324 caps she's got for Canada?
190 goals. She missed the penalty against Nigeria, but as Kathleen's saying, no guarantee that she starts even, especially with Fleming back, because they could get each other's way, and also because Sinclair's 40 years old.
Aside from the fact that Fleming's come back in, they didn't score against Nigeria, and we have a tight defence.
What do we feel on that note about Vera Pauw yesterday, saying that listen, they're good players, but they're not the quickest defence.
Like Canada.
About Ireland.
Oh, about Ireland, yeah. That was.
I think that was justification.
That's just
of
reality,
right? It wasn't a defence mechanism.
True. You're absolutely right. But could you not? Is there another way to? I felt it was a bit clumsy.
Do you think she's clumsy or too candid for public consumption?
Both, probably. I mean, it's reality. Everybody's acutely aware of it. Do you need to repeat it in front of the media?
I'd say she says it in front of the players at training.
Probably
not the fastest defence.
I wouldn't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
But saying it in front of the media felt a bit trap-esque.
Maybe.
Everybody's aware that managers will paint their own reality to make themselves look as good as they possibly can, right? And they'll be delivering subtle messages all over the place in press conferences and whatever else. That's just the way it goes, post-match interviews. But I just think something
could be mind games.
Felt to me a bit clumsy.
Could be mind games, Adrian.
But it's true.
Oh, it's definitely true. It's definitely. There's no doubt that the lack of pace at the back is a bit of a concern. A few of the comments coming in on YouTube, of course, starting off with the jerseys. Terry Kelly says, "Morning lads, love the shirts. Think Cullum's shirt is the one of the nicest ever."
Oof.
Steve McCarthy says, "Adrian wins the jersey war." Cahill Doherty, "I like Adrian's jersey as it is the same age as Cullum."
I don't think so.
I would say it's slightly
10 years older.
It's Giles territory.
Yeah.
Cahill, come on. We haven't put your glasses on this morning.
Cahill or Cahill
this morning.
Cahill Doherty, let us know in the comments. Are you Cahill or Cahill?
Well, one thing we can be sure of, he'll be Cahill.
He'll be.
Well, now established this before that the name is actually Cahill.
You're Cahill Doherty. I do know.
Unless you come from the
Cahill Doherty and Monaghan, who's from Donegal, and I think he'd agree with me that it's Cahill Doherty.
Well, unless you're from Ulster, I would say you're Cahill.
Okay, that's the cut-off point.
That would be my.
Sorry, do you know
it's fine.
On that, speaking of Donegal, Enda Call, former colleague, used to say Meath.
Yeah, no,
that's mental.
That would be an Ulster thing.
No, it's not. No.
It's in the same way that Mexicans like ourselves say Tyrone.
Yeah, but that's outrageous.
Did you say Tyrone or Tyrone?
It's Tyrone.
It's Tyrone, yeah.
Like, I know that Tyrone people go, they just do CHRONE.
Yeah, Tyrone.
Yeah.
It's Tyrone if you're from there. But Meath, no, I'd never say Meath.
It's a very soft TH. Like, where is he going with Meath?
I'm not sure everyone in Donegal does that.
I'll ask Lachlan Hart.
Yeah, we'll find out. Carl Daly says 10 p.m. kick-off here in Sydney on a school night too. So that'll be what, 8 p.m. local time in Perth. Kick-off. 1 p.m. Irish time for the kick-off for that game. John Buckley bringing us back down to earth. Ireland never looked like scoring against Australia.
No, I agree with it for large parts, but right at the end, McCabe has that chance.
Yeah,
you know, when she has to put it shift it onto her right foot. Louise Quinn's glancing header. Also, when McCabe puts Kira Cruza through in the first half after 20 minutes, if Cruza reads that ball better, she's through. But look, largely, we didn't create enough chance.
But also the quality of opposition. So come on, like, it's not like you're.
Well, I know, but we didn't proactively do enough. I don't think, and I do think McCabe has wasted that deep. Personally,
there would have been if we hadn't clumsily given away a penalty, we wouldn't be that worried about not being gung ho in our approach.
I still think it's been disappointing.
Rubber Ducky makes a good point. He says everybody involved are adults. The team don't need to be mollycoddled. Facts are facts. If you're slow, you're slow. I think that's fair.
Well, are also is Vera Pauw so confident that she's like, I don't mind saying this to her opponents.
I think in the middle of a World Cup, as I said, I'm not disputing the veracity of what she's saying. It's true. But I just think in the middle of a World Cup, there's a subtlety to your language. Are the players looking at that going, oh, that's great, thanks, Vera, that's...
I don't think the players care.
I think the players are looking at that going, Jesus, would you do us a favour? Like, you know, like, I know she's also complimenting them by saying they're very good players. And as I said, the pace thing is obvious.
Yeah.
It's been there for long enough, we're all aware of it. But just think there's another way of saying it.
Plenty of comments coming in. Evan Morahan, good friend of mine from Monaghan, is watching in from, I think, Sydney.
Evan Morahan from Monaghan.
He's actually from Monaghan. His father's from Lewisburg and Mayo, so that's where the name comes in. Shout out to you, Evan, and all the lads watching in Australia ahead of the game tonight, I guess, where the lads are. That 10 p.m. kick-off in Sydney, I guess that's difficult for fans over there. Michael says, I'm enjoying the World Cup so far. Standard is good, so Ireland face a challenge. Wish them all the best today. Everyone's wondering who's your daddy went and enjoyed his Holliers. There's a few of those comments to that effect. Of course, Ger came back last week and bronzed God.
Bronze Adonis.
Yeah,
and I'm just an Adonis, so that
well, yeah. Freckled Adonis.
You don't need it.
No, I need to wear factor 50. And also, where I was in France, I'd our former colleague, now producer of the Pat Kenny show, Sue Murphy, who popped her head around the corner earlier on, to welcome me back and give me a dig in the ribs, was on to me saying, oh, could you come on and talk about the oppressive heat in Europe? And it was overcast and 20-25 degrees mostly, so
fair.
I tell you where you won't get a colour at the moment.
I know you're going to go.
Perth.
Oh, the producer always does the segue. When the presenter won't do it, the producer will do it.
No.
Kathleen McNamee, live from Perth. Good morning, good afternoon.
Afternoon, guys. Yeah, I thought my arm was about to fall off there listening to you chat about different things, but it's absolutely lashing rain in Perth at the moment. I don't know if you can see it. I'm just at the Fan Festival. Behind me, we have a game ongoing. Lots of Irish fans here, actually. I think I've only seen about 3 or 4 Canadian jerseys. A couple of Canadian fans have walked in and then just walked straight out again. So safe to say the Irish are definitely taking over Perth at the moment.
Is the rain a good thing for us? So I'm going to try and stretch it to that.
Probably suit us better. It could lead to like a game that was a little bit more all over the shop, which may not be a bad thing. It's not a good thing for me because I have to sit in it for 2 hours. But yeah, I think it's supposed to stop by the time the game stops this evening. The pitch was covered over for most of yesterday, so I assume it's the same today to protect it from the rain. So I actually don't think it's going to make that mad of a difference. It's been absolutely lashing all morning here.
Sorry, temperature-wise, did you say, is it cool? You said it was cool yesterday.
Yeah, it's cold. It's like a kind of classic Irish summer day here at the moment, except it's the middle of the winter for Australia.
Has Perth livened up a touch, or has it still, I guess, close to the kick-off, you expect it to liven up a little bit?
A little bit. Like, I'm at the Fan Festival now, so obviously you're talking to people who are actually here because of the match, so there's definitely a bit more of an atmosphere. I was in an Irish bar last night and there was a good atmosphere around the place, but also a lot of people who didn't even know the World Cup was happening. So of all the cities I've been to, I feel like Perth maybe hasn't fully caught up with the World Cup vibe. We were talking to some Perth Glory fans who were saying though that the stadium here is actually a really, really good football stadium. It's quite small And because of that, it means that the crowds that they get are generally only 8,000 or 9,000 for their A-League games over here. So a lot of the local fans actually bought tickets because they just want to see what the stadium is like full and what the atmosphere will be like with the Irish fans. So it should be good crack later. I'm also making my Australian TV debut later on. I'm going to be on the World Cup coverage right here. So yeah, I might not come back, lads. I might stay over here.
Yeah.
Can you hand in your notice on air? This is unprecedented.
This is what's happening.
Kathleen, I was listening to you on the World Cup show yesterday with Sinead O'Carroll and Will O'Callaghan. You were hoping for a 2-1 win against Canada, but you're a bit more pessimistic now that you've slept on it. Anything changed?
I mean, in my heart, I would love a 2-1 win, but I don't think it's going to be that. I think they'll probably be 2-1 to Canada. I just don't know where the goals are going to come from. That's the thing. Like, if we know we have a proven goal scorer on the bench, but if we had a proven goal scorer that we knew Vera was going to play, I think things would be a little bit different. But I think with the way the weather is at the moment and the conditions that there probably will be, it's going to be difficult either way to get that goal. And I've actually upgraded my World Cup hopes of us getting out of the group to us actually scoring a goal at some stage. I was listening to you talk before, and I think it was someone wrote in to say Ireland didn't look like scoring a goal at any stage against Australia. I don't think that's fair or true. I think the last 10-15 minutes between the McCabe chance and the Quinn chance, we did look like scoring a goal, but I will totally accept that for the rest of the game we didn't look like scoring all that much. So yeah, it's a difficult one.
Is there a chance, Kathleen, that some of the suggestions this morning, I'm looking at the sun here in front of me saying that Abby Larkin will start today, is there a chance that Amber Barrett goes through the group stages here without seeing a minute's play?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to a couple of the lads here that work for the PFA, and they were saying something similar, that they actually don't reckon that Amber is going to get any minutes, which doesn't make any sense at all. But we had said this from the minute the team was picked, we were like, we're stressing over this 23, even though we know realistically Vera is probably only going to play between 13 and 15 players throughout the entire tournament. I don't think she's the sort that's going to just give players minutes either, just for the sake of it. So it's disappointing because I think, especially in a game like today, if it's 20 minutes from the end, we haven't scored, we need a goal, why not put on Amber Barrett? We need a result tonight, and we don't really want to be going into the final game depending on other teams to get a result to make sure that we go through. So I'm all for putting her on, but I will see what Vera does. I'm not all that optimistic about her.
Yeah, I agree. I think as you say, Vera is not someone to give a cap to someone just for the sake of it, but I think if there's 20 minutes left, 15 minutes left and under a goal down, the whole country will be screaming at the TV saying this isn't an Amber Barrett cap for the sake of it. This is an Amber Barrett cap because we need a bloody goal. So I don't know, Vera Pauw, if we lose each of these games in the group by a goal, or we draw one of the games and we end up not qualifying, Vera Pauw is going to be under serious heat for not bringing on Amber Barrett, I'd imagine.
I think so, and I think she has proven herself in the sense that, after not playing for those 6 months after that big night in Scotland and Hampden Park, and then coming on for those warm-up games and performing the way she did, and showing once again that when she puts her mind to it, she can score goals. I mean, she scored one of our only goals from open play in the last year. Well, actually, 2 of our only open goals from open play in the last year or so. So it's kind of frustrating as to why she's not getting that chance all that much. I mean, Vera's been very coy on it whenever she has been asked and said that it's tactical reasoning. And I mean, we all know that she likes her players to be runners and she likes them being able to sorry, I got distracted by the match that's going on in the background for me there. I thought it was a goal. We know that she likes those athletic style players, but Amber has proven that she works well in getting us a goal, so why not give her that shot?
Kathleen, the referee's decision after VAR checks now is being heard by the whole stadium, which is something I haven't seen before, and it's a very good TV product for the viewer, but does it translate to actually being in the stadium?
Not massively from what I've seen. Generally, it's kind of a bit muffled and hard to make out, so you're kind of relying on the information that you're getting through online rather than what you're actually hearing in the stadium. But as you say, it's a good TV product, and I think there's some things that they still need to work out a little bit with it, but I think if they keep developing it, they'll be a really, really good addition.
You'd wonder, there's comments of modicums of positivity coming in. A lot of people on the Amber Barrett stuff as well. Aisling Enright says, crazy if Barrett doesn't get time on the pitch. Shane says 0-0 draw. Just hope we don't have Louise Quinn playing the Shane Duffy role again while Lambert remains on the bench. That's the thing as well.
It won't be crazy that she doesn't get a minute if we end up winning the game 1-0.
Yeah,
right?
look.
Like, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves with the Amber. I was certainly one of the people looking at the game the last day going, bloody hell, give her a chance. But let's see what happens today.
Yeah, well, it was interesting yesterday because Kira Caruso was actually asked yesterday by one of the journalists, how would you feel if Louise Quinn took your position? Because obviously she was moved up the pitch for those final few minutes in Sydney. And Kira kind of laughed it off a little bit, but then was like, in all seriousness, we know as a team that Louise is the sort of player who can get goals in these crunch moments with her head in that way. So it's kind of funny that even the team have low-key accepted that that's the only way we are going to get goals, when in reality you would think that, you know, there is a lot of other possibilities. I mean, it's like Vera going into the team at half-time and telling them that the game is going to be decided by either an Australian mistake or an Ireland mistake. Like, when a game is that much in the balance, why aren't you saying to the team, you know, this is a great opportunity to make, you know, a little bit of history for ourselves. It's all in the balance. Let's go for it. Don't be putting it in their heads they're going to make a mistake. So I feel like everyone has been listening to Vera for a long time, and maybe some of the messages are starting to kick in a way that they shouldn't, and that it's a negative way of looking at the games and a negative style of playing, I think, which is always the Vera's thing. But we're at a World Cup. Like, let's try something at the end of the day.
I kind of tend to agree. Like that thing of waiting, you know, even if you're going to go and win this game, it's going to be an Australian mistake. That's quite reactive. Like, go and do it. Do you know, I don't like to hear things in a halftime team talk. This is going to be decided by either a mistake by us or a mistake by Australia, because that means we can't just go out and win the game.
But yeah, like, I've talked to so many players since then, and they've all said the exact same thing. They're like, the minute your coach says that, you have in your head about making a mistake. And like, whether you try to or not, it's subconsciously there. So like, I don't understand tactically what she was doing. I mean, a lot of us weren't even at that press conference because we were at the mixed zone after the game. But I wish more of us had been, so you could kind of properly quiz her on what she was talking about.
Kathleen, I'm interested in when you were talking a bit about sort of sleepy Perth there, right? And like 76,000 at the opener against Australia, the buzz, the hype, like full on Broadway, right? And there is a bit of and I was looking at some of the numbers that FIFA have put out about the domestic audience for the game, off the charts. Like, it was very much centre of the universe at that time. It's a World Cup, but there is a bit of an off-Broadway feel about this, and you're going to a ground, is it 25,000, is it just over 20,000 at the game today? Is there a bit of a, I'm not saying it's a come down, it's a World Cup, it's off the charts, right, in that regard, but like, it's not the glitz of the first game. So is there something in that for the players to have to manage themselves almost?
I don't even know if it's so much that far. People are just leaving now because the game is finished, all off for a few points or something, I imagine. I think it's probably more actually the time between the games rather than how long or how it's like in Perth today. Like, I was chatting to Rihanna Jarrett earlier, and she was saying she was at the team hotel this morning and that the team just want to play this game. It's been such a long time since last week, and like, there was obviously massive build up to, like you were saying, and then the fact it's an 8 o'clock kickoff as well. She said that the players are just like, let us just get out onto the pitch. I think like for them, because they were in Brisbane and then over to Perth, it's kind of... Sorry about that, Chris. Sorry, calls started coming in, which sent me off. And because it was in Brisbane first and then they came over to Perth, I think they've kind of had that time in the busier city, and I imagine the downtime hasn't been the worst thing in the world. Like, you walk around Perth and there's still like Irish jerseys to be seen, and probably for them maybe a little bit more anonymity than they would have had in Sydney. You know, they were being stopped anytime they left their hotel in Sydney for autographs and stuff, so not necessarily a bad thing having a little bit of more chill time here before heading back to Brisbane.
What's the Canadian outlook towards Ireland? Bev Priestman was saying yesterday, a lot of respect for Ireland, they work hard and all that, but she said, I hope our quality shines through. Do they feel like Ireland aren't much of a footballing threat?
Yeah, I think so. Like, there was a bit of consternation yesterday after Bev Priestman's comments, and she kind of rolled them back a bit when she was like, oh, Ireland are all passion and heart, but basically Canada are quality. We had Carmelina Moscato on the Quick Gig podcast yesterday, which like all football users can get wherever they normally get their podcasts. And she used to play for Canada, was in 3 World Cups, you know, won a CONCACAF title, Olympic bronze medal. And she was saying that this team was like really, really disappointed with that result against Nigeria. And because of all the ongoing stuff with their federation back home, they really, really want to get a result. And they've obviously targeted the likes of Katie McCabe, Denise O'Sullivan, and they think they're going to be able to nullify them. And they're going to have Jessie Fleming back as well for this match, which is absolutely massive for them. Like, it's the equivalent of us not having Katie or Denise for the first game and then coming back for the second game. So yeah, they're feeling quietly confident. One of the battles they were saying that they're looking forward to is Katie and Ashley Lawrence. Ashley Lawrence just signed for Chelsea before the World Cup and is a really, really good player. Normally plays on the opposite wing to Katie, but they reckon that Bev Priestman might switch her over to kind of take her out a little bit.
Jesus, I've got the appetite whetted now. It's a build up nicely. Kathleen, listen, enjoy the game, and no doubt people can keep up to date on the Off the Ball social channels and your own Twitter as well for updates. But yeah, enjoy the build up and the match itself.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Kathleen McNamee live for us there in Perth, 1 p.m. kickoff Irish times. Just 5 hours to go until that game gets underway. As Kathleen mentioned there, the Koi Gig pod. We're going to have loads of build-up, by the way, between now and 10 o'clock for the match. Linda Gorman is standing by. We're going to dive deeper into the match with her. Anthony Moyles then around 20 past 8 or so, previewing the All-Ireland Senior Football Final between Dublin and Kerry this weekend. We've got Keith Wood at around about 8:50 or so, picking his current World Rugby 15. And Meabh De Burca with more build-up to the match at 10 past 9 with Kevin Kilbane chatting to our own column here from around 9:30 as well. During this ad break, you're going to hear a clip from the latest Koi Gig pod, which Kathleen just mentioned there. The Koi Gig pod in association with Cadbury, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland's women's national team. In this clip, Kathleen, Karen and Emma discuss the troubles behind the scenes with the Canadian football team. After the break, Linda Gorman in studio.
OTB AM.
Cheering on the girls in green.
Top pocket goal!
Hashtag OTB Koi Gig.
Do you think this is a little bit of added pressure for the girls? All of that's going on. You know, if they don't do well in this World Cup, will that leave it a little bit stale in regards to that fight?
That's an interesting question. To your point, I don't think it's about achievement. I really don't. I think it is. There's a broader conversation around how, federation money is spent, how they're actually marketing, and what the commercial invest. Where are those? Who's making those decisions, and are they in line with our values? Yeah, really. And I think that transparency has been missing for a long time with the federation. And so I do think it is about the conditions first and foremost, really. And then I think equal pay is now becoming a standard and is right amongst those asks. But it's going to be about leaving the sport, like our youth system, for example, like it's non-existent. In the sense that a lot of the funding's been cut. And then, a lot of our senior players are looking at that and saying, where are these next players coming from? What are we doing? What is the plan? And you want to give that, that assurance to everybody that we know what we're up to. And I think we're just a little bit off track at the minute.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Indeed, 2 minutes past 8 on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show on Off the Ball with myself and Adrian, live with you right through until 10 o'clock. Continuing the build up now to the Republic of Ireland versus Canada, 1 p.m. Irish time kickoff. Delighted to say Linda Gorman has joined us back in studio. Morning, Linda.
Good morning, lads.
Thanks for hopping in.
Delighted to be here.
You've got the hat with you as well. I've never seen anything like it.
It's very impressive.
But listen, there's quite a few of them over in the in Perth today, I can tell you, because that was made by a friend who lives in Sheriff Street. So she's made quite a few of them.
So it's roasting on a summer's day.
Who cares?
There's a bit of work gone into that, Linda. That is not that's not something you're buying in one of these supermarkets.
Oh no, this is it was crocheted. It's over a cap.
Oh yeah, okay.
And to give it the effect.
Yeah.
Some people think I'm Mexican, but however.
Yeah, today you're definitely Irish, 100%. Are you feeling nervous, optimistic? How's the head for this one?
Very optimistic today. Yeah, really, really feeling good today because of the results that the Canadians had.
Yeah, they haven't been all that impressive, have they, in recent months?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, people look at them like coming from the back of having won the Olympics, but I haven't really been impressed with them. and the Nigerians put it up to them. You know, and if I'm correct, they have 2 yellow cards coming into this game, so it's interesting to know who they're going to, what the team lineup will be.
If you're not feeling that they're going to, because we were chatting about it earlier on, that teams can sometimes start off a little bit slowly and work their way in. You're seeing more worrying signs from a Canadian point of view in the lead into this. Yeah,
because they absolutely have to get a result. Look how, I mean, they're quite ahead of us in the rankings as well, and I mean, they're very disappointed. I would be crazily disappointed not having gotten something out of the last game. So I think again the pressure is on them. Now we're going to want to show what we can do, and we will be cautious, but I'm hoping that we will have a little more of an attacking setup. It's a completely different game, because the Irish will have done their homework, Vera would have done her homework, and the Canadians would have done their homework, and of course they're always going to be trying to match who can we cancel out on the Irish team. And to be quite honest with you, I think the girls on the Irish team, I mean, if Katie McCabe's going to be targeted, if Denise O'Sullivan's going to be targeted, they have that just suits them down to the ground. They'll come out with something, they'll come out on top, because they read the game very well. And another thing about being targeted and try to play out a game is that you can do things to draw people to release other players just because you are the player that you are. So if they could draw 2 or 3 players to them if they're on the ball and they're smart enough to release the ball early, we might have the advantage.
Jessie Fleming being back as the playmaker, presumably that's a direct battle with her and Katie McCabe. It's going to be physical either way.
Listen, I love a physical game myself, and that's what you have to do when you're going out. You have to try and look for their weaknesses, and we all have weaknesses, but Katie's not going to lie down under this one, absolutely not.
There are a couple of injury concerns mentioned in the papers, which have been concerning us all week. I guess Louise Quinn and Heather Payne being the 2 that I'm talking about. If either of those are to be missing, it's a bit of a blow. Vera Pauw isn't a manager, I guess, that likes to utilise a lot of her squad, so when it gets to the second choice, the third choice in a certain position, I guess the options are limited.
Yeah, they are limited, all right, but I would pay no attention to anything like that until I see the lineup. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't speculate, because I mean, sometimes this is a psychological game. The way the Aussies were or the Canadians were talking yesterday, and the way the Aussies had been previously, this type of stuff comes on. But we're well used to that, and I hope the girls are not listening to any of that type of stuff. If you're selecting a team, because I was watching your post-match with Shane and Aisling after the last game, and you weren't as impressed with Abby Larkin as a lot of others. And there's one suggestion in the Sun this morning that Payne may miss out, Shiva drops a bit deeper, and Larkin comes in. Is it a straight shootout between herself and Barrett, or how do you lean on that conversation? Well, my thoughts when Abby came on was that she was unsure when she got the ball what she was doing in the first couple of minutes, and then one of her passes was quite weak coming across, so I don't know whether she was ahead of the girls in terms of her attacking and thinking and they hadn't caught up, or it was just because she was smiling coming on, thrilled to be on, whereas I and most people would be just so serious. She's young, but she has some talent. She's so good. I mean, she will make an impression, and it's going to be great for us if we have the likes of her coming on. It's quite possibly Shifa might go back if Payne is injured, but again, we can't really tell. We have to just wait and see, because we all thought Vera was going to put on Amber Barrett, and quite a few people were taken aback that she hadn't, so we really don't know what's going on.
On Amber Barrett, it seems to have been a thread since the match, the opening game, but we were chatting this morning, there's a very distinct and real possibility that she mightn't play a minute at this World Cup, given the way Vera Pauw goes about things. We needed a goal later on against Australia, and she didn't use her then, so presumably she's not going to use her at any stage if we need a goal. She's not her option. Well,
I'm sure people will have said to Vera, look at, or she's hearing whispers here there because she's out in the media, she's going to be hearing whispers, why are you not putting on Barrett? I mean, you have to look at what Barra can give in relation to who she's playing against. And a lot of us thought that she definitely would put her up to the Aussies, and she will put her up to the Canadians if she's given the opportunity. I would think, and it would make sense, and the only way I can figure out what Vera is doing is that the more you play together, the more you're synchronised with each other, and maybe that's the reason why she's mainly sticking to the same team and the same type of system of play. But if you look at the other teams that are playing in the World Cup, like the majority have really going for it. They're pushing 2 and 3 players forward, you know, in a line out. So you know, and it's worked for them. It really has worked for them. So maybe take a little bit of pressure off the back and maybe push somebody forward, so that we always have somebody to aim for if we're in trouble. And if we can't aim for them, like, we're looking to play in behind the wingers, you know, so that we can at least have them running on the back feet.
Yeah, it's not Vera Shane is saying it's not her style, is it? Like, it'll be a departure from the norm.
Could I just say that it is the departure from the norm, and what excited me was that the players seem restricted in their individual talents, but when she let loose in the last 15-20 minutes, I mean, we could see the players expressing themselves and the stuff that they could do, and it sort of lifted the game as another gear. That's the way I read it.
Can I ask you one that's slightly related to that? We were talking about it a bit earlier on, Vera Pauw's comments in the press conference yesterday, where she talked about she has to play 5 at defence because they're good players but they just don't have any pace. It felt to me to be a slightly unusual comment. To be, it's not an incorrect comment, right? I think everybody's aware that we're lacking a bit of pace at the back, but to be saying that in the middle of the World Cup, it felt to me a little bit out of kilter with the general spirit of things.
Well, my philosophy is the best form of defence is attack, and if you can keep the ball away from our players, and our players are thinking, I got to find you first, second touch on the ball, or maybe the first touch on the ball, I've got to find somebody, and the players, knowing that their back four may not be fast, should be showing for the ball, if nothing else. I'm not sure I'd say something like that, you know, because it is sort of obvious, but I wouldn't emphasise it. But at the same time, our girls can read the game and they can anticipate moves, and that's one thing that we have going for us, and they're very brave.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the thing that Vera Pauw is calling for on the back page of a lot of the papers. Show me guts. She says she wants the players to have the guts to fail. I guess it's got to that point where it is winner takes all, like, and we need at least a point from this game today. The players know that, so it is all or nothing if they're ever going to have a massive display. This is the biggest game in these players' careers. We said that about the Australia game, but now there's actual jeopardy on the line here.
Yeah, have the guts to fail. That's sort of like saying, listen, you can make mistakes. You can make a mistake, but, you know, don't be afraid to go for the ball, even if you do make a mistake. It's all or nothing today. It's a great opportunity. Let's not talk about all or nothing. It's a great opportunity to get a result out of this, provided we have the right mindset. Individual players have the right mindset. I hope Shifa is going to start off today, because she's going to up their game. You know, in terms of, she obviously feels terrible after the penalty, but when that happens to you, you want to give an extra 10%, you know, which is very good for her. And I mean, if I was talking to her, I'd say to her, look, you're very lucky. You're starting your career. Sheridan missed a penalty, and she's at the end of her career. She'll never get a chance now, you know, to do this. You know, that's, you know, so you have to put that aside and get on with the game and get on with the best that you can do in your area. But, you know, there's loads of different things you can do if you're a slow player. You know, you're not fast. Yeah, if you can anticipate passes, you can get close to the player that they can turn. So it saves you having to chase instead of stepping off, letting them run at you, and then you can't get them. You know. Yeah. So it's really individuals being able to read their own game in their own area, but also having somebody to get them out of trouble. So, for instance, if I was playing, and I do this all the time, I even do it with the lads, I always say, no, stay out, because I need somebody to play the ball to, or an area to play the ball to. I don't want to come back in on top of me.
you have to play it to your strengths, I guess. The Rubber Ducky saying in the comments, people just can't handle straight talking these days. If the management team came out and said we were amazing and should have won 3-0, would the media be going along with that narrative? That's the other side of it, and we mentioned it earlier that these are grown adults, these players. So Vera Pauw saying something in a press conference that, they're maybe a little bit slow, shouldn't really impact them. Not that the players are listening to the media discussions anyway, really. Well,
maybe they ought to sit in the American dressing room because they think that they're going to win every position. They're so full of confidence, even if they're not. It doesn't really show in the games, but they're oozing confidence individually. I wouldn't be saying stuff to the press personally. Even whatever I felt inside, I wouldn't be saying anything.
We hammered Trapattoni didn't we, for long enough with he kept coming out to say he was basically saying I know I'm basically doing these guys a favour because I'm better than they are, and it's not I think it's not a great message to send out in the middle of World Cup. Listen, I think if we go out and win today 1-0 or we end up drawing it, everything's going to look like a master stroke. But we'll see.
Listen, they're going to give their. What do you think is going to happen? I generally don't speculate, and I won't speculate because I don't know what the team is. When I know what the team is and I get a feel for how individual players are playing in their position, it only takes about 10-15 minutes, and then how collectively who they link up with, I get this feeling, we're doing good. But if you have somebody that makes a mistake, particularly in defence, you've now got a player who's got to give half a job to helping somebody else out, so that stretches us really well. I really hope that we're going to stay compact as we move up the field and we can support the forward players quickly, and not like some of the games. Now I've been watching some of the games and they're for Japan, for me, I just loved watching them. Brazil yesterday, trying to take too much out of the ball, very clever in the very clever, very calm, very aware in the who was behind her. But I mean, and that's showmanship. I'd love to see that a bit earlier, and they obviously have it. And yesterday was the time to show it, but because they're not going to get that type of opportunity. But the Irish girls, going back to our Irish girls, the Canadians haven't drawn in the last game, is going to give such an individual immense lift to the girls, because the door is open. It might be ajar, but at least it's open and the opportunity is there. But we've got to take it by scoring a goal. You have to score a goal.
Where's that going to come from?
It's hard to know. It depends on what she does. It's really hard to know. Could be Abby Larkin.
Could be.
Could be
Amber Barrett off the bench.
It could be Amber off the bench. It could be Katie McCabe. I don't know.
Directly from a corner.
We'll take all three of them. Sure, we'll win 3-0.
Have you been watching the other games or?
Bits and pieces, to be honest. I've been away, but
Brazilian goal. Sorry, the fact that England scraped past Haiti 1-0, and
there's definitely been a few odd results. Watching Brazil the other day, like you were saying, there was that goal that they scored where the goal opens up and just banging in the net, but she chooses to put it back the way, and then
but you see what she did when she rolled it back. She moved so that the player could just see everything in front of her.
Brilliant. And even the Philippines beating New Zealand as well. There's some shock results.
Well, you know what's good is that the lower ranked teams are actually outdoing themselves. They really are. And also for FIFA and this misconception that there's such a huge gap between the top tier and the lower tiers, it's actually closed it quite quickly over this beginning of these few rounds in the World Cup.
You're marking the first home game as well.
We are. We played first home game in Bluebell's pitch
50 years ago,
and this is the team that's played the famous Anne O'Brien, who's there as well. Amazing.
So the current team on the right and the first team on the left.
The first team on the left. And if you think of it, one of the girls, Mary Gavin, I think, was only 14.
That's
14. Yeah. So all these records you think that people have done, we haven't really, they haven't really delved enough into the history of women's football, and the only way it can be done now really is locally. But 14.
Northern Ireland in Bluebell.
Northern Ireland, Bluebells pitch, very generous of them to give us the pitch. I mean, you can imagine it wasn't actually like the pitches to play on now, so you had to adjust yourself because the lumps of turf that you had to get over, and then the goals, and it was in a housing estate. It wasn't on the new pitch they have now, but that's where everybody played, so.
There's consistent ACL injuries in the Women's Super League today on the unbelievable carpeted pitches, so I presume back then there were injuries galore.
Well, of the 32 players who played in the first 4 home games in 73, there are less than a handful who have any type of injury. Mostly it's just knee replacement, not ACL. So I'm not really sure, but I do know it's got to do with puberty and women having bigger hips ratio than men, and how it leans on the quads and then down into the joints in the knee, and that's really what the problem is. But that can be addressed by doing particular type of exercises that differ from the guys. So in our day, because we trained with guys, I'm assuming is that I'm a visual learner, so I would look at a guy, say, doing a jump and the way he lands, and I want to land the way he lands, which is obviously probably suited me, because I never had any knee injuries or anything like that. A lot of us didn't, when you think of the 32 squad.
Amazing.
Amazing. But then we were doing an awful lot of cross sports as well.
This is it. Different types of sports.
And you have to build up your glutes. So we didn't know that at the time, but we did a lot of hill running in training.
That would have been ideal.
So that was doing it. So we didn't know that we were doing job back and forth. You know what I mean?
Your time without
we didn't. We were just watching all the other. Well, mostly it was guys and the World Cup teams. And how they trained. I mean, I remember telling somebody that I had Kevin Healy, who was with Bose. He just opened my eyes to football. We've all him to thank for. He said to us, "You really don't know how to run." And I was shocked by that. So I joined Dublin City Harriers for 6 weeks, and he was so right, because I'd heard in one of the World Cups, I think it was either the late 70s or early 80s, I think it was early 80s, that the athleticism in the German team, who were very successful in that era, was down to the fact that they were getting coaching from athletics, and you can see it in some of the players, how they look athletic, the way they run, and then you can see it in other players where they look very heavy on the lower end. It's that's the type of stuff that I look at.
Absolutely. Linda, love the optimism that you've brought to studio this morning. I'm feeling a little bit better about the game now. Enjoy the match, and thanks million for having in as always. Brilliant stuff.
Okay.
Linda Gorman there. Brilliant stuff. And one of the comments coming in as well, someone says, are people being given extended lunch breaks to catch the whole match at 1 o'clock? If you're a boss and you are giving your employees an extended lunch break, fair play to you. And if you're not,
why not?
Take a long hard look at yourself, and you still have time to change your mind. Everyone should be getting the chance to watch this match. If it was in school times, the kids would be watching it. So I think working employees should be able to watch it as well. 100% people should be given that chance. 8:22 a.m. on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Myself and Adrian with you. Up next, it's Anthony Moyles previewing the Dubs versus Kerry this weekend. First though, I was chatting yesterday with the legendary Dublin fan, Dublin Jerry, as part of our All-Ireland final build-up. Here he is talking about icon Stephen Cluxton. Back in a sec. What was going through your head when that Cluxton kick was sailing over in 2011?
Well, I wrote a song. I never got it. I never got anybody to bring it out. It was over actually the next day after the match, But the third last pair of scores up the pitch, Cluxton ran. He had a good look at the Sam. He says that's hours about the 3 over. It was just at the death. 82,000 head of bread. One kick and the ball sailed over. There was hats and flags flying, grown men and women crying. I seen drunken people suddenly getting sober. Kerry, they were sadded up to the lad as soon as the hurling was over. Brian Cullen's 14 stone, all muscle and bone. He led his team up those famous steps of Croker. And we all knew the last thing he had to do was to lift that Sam high above his shoulders. I missed a presentation. I was on doctor's medication. 3 points and I just flipped over. Dr. David Hickey said to me, Dublin Jerry Francis Martin, can't you see? But he's getting drunk and with the name of Jay, he gets sober.
Brilliant. Oh, Jesus, that's class. You definitely remember that kick, so with a song like that. And a brilliant rendition too, Jerry, to be fair. Yeah, Dublin Jerry there, the Dublin superfan. What a character. You'll get that full interview up on the YouTube today, and all the other bits and bobs I did yesterday. I was chatting with Charlie Redmond down at the Aaron's Isle Club in Finglas, and others besides Sean Potts as well in his Piper's Corner pub. So loads of Dublin build up, and we'll have Kerry build up later in the week as well. And on that, Dublin versus Kerry, Anthony Moyles has joined myself and Adrian in the studio. Morning, Anthony. How are things?
Morning, Shane. Have you recovered?
Recovered. Yes. Fully recovered and recuperated. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay. Look, it's the
disappointment. Cut steam.
Listen.
It's the final that, to be fair, and I think even Monaghan and Derry fans who lost the semi-finals can accept this. It is the final that all the neutrals wanted. Certainly the final that the Dubs and Kerry fans wanted. But it's perilously perched, isn't it? It's hard to differentiate between them.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully just nothing happens on the day to kind of take out one of the big players, and you'd hope that everyone is kind of fit and healthy and ready to go. It is perilously perched, and I keep I flip-flop during the week whether I think it's going to be a Dublin win or whether I think it's going to be a Kerry win, for all my Kerry supporters out there.
All watching this morning.
Growing numbers. I'm still backing them all the way, as I have been for the last number of weeks.
Vague amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't quite remember. Yeah, no, I think it's all about the matchups, really. It's all about the matchups, and that is going to be, I think, the Bugler loss for Dublin, if he is out, causes a bit of a headache for Desi. There's no doubt about that, because I think he fulfills a role that is quite difficult to fill for Dublin in this current setup, which is just direct running. Correct. Yeah, it's that direct running from 11, and I think more so against this Kerry team because of Morley's positioning and the way he drops back in and he protects that D. You do need a direct 11. You need someone who's just willing to go, turn and go. So actually I think people are calling for Kilkenny. I don't think he'll start Kilkenny. Right. I think he'll leave Kilkenny because Kilkenny, I think it's been long kind of discussed about the fact that Kilkenny is quite lateral at times. He controls the ball very well. He's very, very good at coming on and basically taking the sting out of a game and being able to control it, being able to kind of work things out. But as far as, the first 35, 40, 45 minutes where you need someone to take that ball at 11, as I say, go direct down the gut of Kerry, I think he could switch things around with. I think he tried that with Pascal, and I wouldn't be surprised. I know Pascal didn't go well the last day, but there's always a bit of a come down after a high, so I wouldn't be surprised if he moved Pascal to 11 and try to get his pace from there. I don't think he'll start O'Dell, albeit O'Dell has that pace and he kind of comes on like a McMenamum type figure. So I think there's going to be a little bit of deck chair shifting, but I think ultimately what it'll come down to is those matchups, and then that the two benches in the last 10-15 minutes.
So a lot has been said about the Dublin bench. I've been chatting to Kerry people in the last week or so, and maybe some respect hasn't been thrown on the Kerry bench in a similar vein to the Dubs. We all know that the quality you saw it against Monaghan, like the quality coming off that Dublin bench is insane, but Kerry's benches and all that, but like even Stephen O'Brien was someone that probably people didn't expect much of, but he comes on at half time and changes the game in many ways.
Yeah, he was unbelievable the last day, and he did change the game for them, and I think he brought an energy, he brought an enthusiasm, he brought an intensity that just wasn't there in that kind of half back, half forward, certainly the half forward line. So again, Jack O'Connor's sitting there and saying, well, do I start him? And that's a difficult thing to do again, because Stephen is probably, he's I think he's more of an impact player now. So do you go with Spillane and say, listen, we're just going to go with a fella who can just give me everything for 35, 40 minutes in around the middle where Dublin are obviously strong. I don't think it is as strong. I don't think the Kerry bench is as strong as Dublin. There's no one really on that bench who's scaring the daylights out of me, to be honest with you. O'Buglig will probably come on. Tony Brosnan will probably come on. And Brosnan has has been hit and miss this year. You know, he could do something absolutely brilliant, but you know, he could also just fade into the background as well. And I'm not, you know, there's no one else really who's kind of saying to me, wow, that's someone who can really take this game from me. So, you know, O'Brien, there's probably your first 3 or 4 subs there. Whereas Dublin have to call on potentially, you know, they've got McCaffrey to call on, obviously, who's going to be a bit of a game breaker in that last 10 minutes. And he's a guy that you just don't want to see. I think what Dublin have managed to do this year is they have really focused on the different stages of the game within the game, right? So in other words, they know where they need to be 35, 40 minutes. They then know that first 10 minutes of the second half, who we need to have on the pitch and what we're doing in those first 10 minutes. And then they absolutely know who they want to have on the pitch in the last 10 minutes. Yeah. And regardless, I think, if McCaffrey is 100%, because he obviously is fit, they're saying to themselves, no, his ability in that last 15 minutes to stretch things and to really open up the game is what we need. And I think that's why they probably hold the Kilkenny back to a certain degree. And then, you know, an Odell is very, very important to him. You see him, he's kind of released him as I said, he's that kind of minimum figure who will just get the ball and just go at you and stretch you. And then, of course, they've Dean Rock, they've a couple of other guys, they've Murphy to bring on, who also can attack from the back. So I just think they have a stronger bench, and I think they have more options off the bench.
For all of that, like, it feels like Kerry over the last couple of years are a coming force, right? Like, they've come and they've proven to do it, and it looks like that group will be around for a little while to come. It's hard to say the same thing about Dublin, even though, like, obviously the changes over the last 12 months, the players that have come back in, Tommy was making the point about on the football pod about the 2019 replay and the distinct lack of changes to the 15s now, which is remarkable. Normally there's a good turnaround, and he was saying there was like 1 or 2 players on either side. You have the new water boy that they have, and you have all this sort of stuff. Yeah. But it feels like where Kerry are sort of headed in that direction. Is it a bit of a last sting for this Dublin group? Yeah,
I think we discussed this the last day. I think it is. Like, if you tear potentially Cluxton, McCarthy, Fitzsimons, possibly Kilkenny. If you tear that 4, McCaffrey, 5 out of that's a very hard 5 to replace. You don't replace that too easily. No. And I think the sense has been that it is the number 9. It's all of that. It's the history. It's what we can do as a group. I think Farrell has to be given an awful lot of credit for what he doesn't get much, does he? No, he doesn't.
Pat Gilroy comes back in, and I saw Brawley saying during the week, listen, he's brought the fizz back. Poor old Desi can't get a break.
Exactly. He can't get a break. And by the way, if you go back and you roll your memory back to the COVID situation and the whole thing with the training, you know, and you go back to that whole and then the Cluxton thing. Yeah. I think Desi has earned massively the trust of those players, and I think it's a little bit lazy to kind of say, oh, you know, they're just playing for the 9 in a row. I think they're genuinely playing for Desi. I think they are genuinely playing for the manager and the management team, and I think they believe in it. I would question if they believed it, you know, a couple of years back, but I think there is an absolute. I think what they've realised is, you know what, this guy is a fella who we can trust, and this guy is a manager who has actually stood by us. Like, he never threw anyone under the bus. You know, he took that all on himself that time, right? The Cluxton thing was completely. He basically staged stum about it. Yeah. He said, look, he'll come back when he's ready. You know, and he has never, as I say, he's had fellas in and out. The McCaffrey thing was well handled, and then the Cluxton thing this year was brilliantly handled. How he came back. So I think he has done an absolutely remarkable job. I think he's done a brilliant job to lower expectations coming into this, because, you know, do you remember the drive for 5, the da-da-da, like, there was constant talk about all of this, whereas it's nearly like a sideshow a little bit. It's like a sub story. So I think he's done a brilliant job, and the Gilroy thing, whether it was a ploy to kind of deflect a bit more attention, it has worked. You know, because as you say, everyone's saying, oh Jesus, Pat Gilroy's. He's the difference.
The Mereshka.
You know?
But it shows a lack of ego and stuff as well, obviously, on Desi's part, that, like, I don't mind that, you know, that Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster thing, if we're succeeding, then who cares who gets the credit? Like,
Adrian, it's one of the hardest things, I think, in management, is the fact that people who can actually go, you know what, here, take the reins a little bit and to delegate. It is, and it's not even, it is an ego thing to a certain degree, but it's also a control thing, which is a massive factor in it. And it's also a thing of how will I be perceived by the players if I do this? If I step back a bit and bring someone else in, do the players look at me as weak now? Do they look at me? So there's an awful lot. And by the way, to bring a personality, because to be fair, like Gilroy is a big man in every respect. He commands presence. So when he comes into a situation like that, you have to be very careful. I think he's done a really, really good job. And as you say, I don't think he's got the credit for what he's done.
Did you hear him on the Free State podcast, the Brawley and Dion Fanning podcast?
I missed that. I heard it was very good.
Well, worth check. I shouldn't be sending people to podcasts that are not our own, but it's a great insight into the man. There's one story which you'll definitely appreciate about him walking into the head office of one of the big four, big five, whatever the hell they are in New York. Himself and Brawley one day, and I'll leave you to pick up the story there. But it's well worth. Gives you a great insight into
character. Just looking at and Tommy Rooney put this to Jack O'Connor during the week. Like, Dublin have improved on that semi-final last year. When you look at the team, even Evan Comerford was in goals for a start. Now you have Stephen Cluxton, the experience there. The front six for Dublin last year, you had Bugler, Howard, Kilkenny, Costello, Rock, O'Dell. So there are slight differences, certainly in variations in that six that will be this Sunday compared to last year. The Cluxton impact and him not being involved this year and being involved on Sunday, like how big is that? Because Kerry have to plan differently.
I haven't looked too closely at the kick-out, but I did see someone saying that that Monaghan forced him out to his left a lot of times, which okay, I don't think really Cluxton gets too confused or too worried.
Too fussed either
left, right, short. It doesn't faze him, right? He's that type of an individual. Process driven, knows what he does, good shot stopper, very, very good under the high ball. We know all of those things, but I think he brings a calm as well. I'm not saying Evan Comerford, by the way, because Evan Comerford is an absolutely top-class goalkeeper. And by the way, it's old poor old O'Hanlon, who did unbelievably well during the league. So there's an absolute kind of it's a position where they're richly served, but I think he gives that full back line an awful lot of comfort, especially with anything over the top. So you can manage to mark from side by side to out in front. You know that if it's going over top, he will have absolutely no problem coming to get it, and more than likely he will come and grab it, right? So he plays outfield, he's well able to do all that. His restarts, all those different things, 100%. The lack of goals that have gone in against them this year, they have massively tightened up as a defence. And their whole idea now, well, predominantly is that really quick break. Now, I think where Derry slightly, if you go, there's a really, really brilliant, I think if you watch the last 5 minutes of the first half, Derry Kerry, and the first 5 minutes, you will actually see a stark difference in the intensity in Derry. It's amazing to see. It's as if they said, right, what we're going to do second half is we're going to expect a kind of they're going to come back at us, and they kind of retreated back into their shell a bit. Now Kerry increased the intensity, absolutely, but there wasn't that same kind of, it wasn't manic, but there was a real pace and a real intensity and a real aggression to that first 35 minutes from Derry, and especially that last 5 or 10 minutes from Derry. And the McCaig thing, I think, gives you an insight, I think, into how they're going to play Clifford, because I think Dublin have to bring something slightly different to it. And that is going to be key to obviously Sunday.
How do you there's no point asking how do you mark Clifford, you can't really mark him, but how do Dublin prepare for him?
how do people collectively? Three people
thankfully I do not. I remember we played Kerry in the, I think it was the 07, or it's that long ago now, semi-final, and I remember having actual I genuinely most of the time I used to sleep pretty well before games, but I don't think I slept a wink that night, because I was thinking of, there was Gooch, there was O'Sullivan, there was Ty Kennelly was in that panel, there was obviously, and I was just kind of thinking, who exactly are you going to get and how do you do it? And that is the horrible, when you're faced with a task and you know you're going to be one-on-one, there's no hiding place. And McCaig is a man who took it on his shoulders. He conceded 8 or 9 or whatever it was. And in hindsight, you probably look back and go, that's not a bad haul, to be honest with you.
And he got an early yellow as well. Clifford got one back. But
yeah. I think and Derry showed it a little bit, and I think Dublin will probably look at it on the video and say, oh, okay. Do you remember a couple of times? Remember Clifford was done for the shoulder. He was back in his defence. He ended up back in the defence once or twice, maybe more than that, but really impacting the ball, because McKay just decided to go forward. He just bombed forward, and he brought him up with him. That's you can do that a couple of times if you're 1-on-1, but eventually Clifford will nearly let you, and he'll just let someone else tag you. I think the only way to pull him back consistently is to change the markers on him. So, for example, Fitzsimons is on him, right? If the ball breaks, then someone else tags with him, Davy Byrne, and he goes. Yeah. So he's forcing him all the time. So there's confusion as is to, well, Adrian, you take him if he goes. But now it's like, oh, Davy Byrne's gone. Who's on him? So, and I think then what Dublin have to do is they have to reward that guy with the ball when he goes up the pitch. In other words, that fella has to make an impact when he goes up. He can't just jog up or go down the sideline, because Clifford will join in. Right, exactly. He has to make an impact when he goes up. And by the way, they have that with Gannon. Potentially Merchant. Davy Byrne's well able to go up. Fitzsimons is still even well able to go up and impact the ball. And I think that's the only way to try to impact, because you can't leave him up there and kind of say, or else you do what Cork do and they put a +1 in front of him. And I don't think Dublin will do that.
You're not?
No, I don't think they will. I think they'll have Howard back, with the idea of, well, I'm going to cover this space off, and I think John Small, I don't think John Small will drop off. I think John Small will just will 1-on-1 on Seanie O'Shea, and I think he's done pretty well on O'Shea in the past, and I think he'll just say, well, I'm going to take him out, you guys look after him here behind. And I think what they'll probably do is, the Gannon thing could be interesting. I think Paddy will obviously demand, so will they? I'd say they'd probably talk about Merchant with Paddy, and they'll just stick Merchant on him and say, right, you're just following him everywhere, and put him on the back foot. But I think they might do a little bit of a panel on Clifford, more so though when they have the ball, if you get me.
Would Kerry not bite your arm off for that now? They're going to leave you 1-on-1, and that'll be in rotation. But we're going to concede a couple of points from that, because it's going to create a bit of confusion. But you are going to be 1-on-1, and Clifford will score it whatever way you want. If he's 1-on-1, I
think they will. But I think the issue is, and this is the issue, and Derry obviously looked at this long and hard, as have other teams. When you put that extra man with him, right, it just opens up the spots for the other players. Now, our Kerry, I flipped during the Derry game, and I was kind of saying, McKay needs a dig out here. He needs someone else, because it was so evident that obviously it was all about Clifford that day, so you needed somebody else. They had the other matchups okay, but what happens is it's kind of like a weed. You knock that one down, next thing the other one sprouts up. Correct, yeah. So, but does Gainey, I think, has been kind of blown hot and cold, but is that the fact because he is being marked specifically, and if all of a sudden you decide to rotate his man, that he all of a sudden gets 3 or 4 points, and he adds in 3 or 4 on top of the 7 or 8 that Clifford will inevitably get. Now you're at 12. And they stick a goal in. So I think it's kind of, you have to say, we are going to do a little bit of rotation. I think that there's not going to be a whole pile of rotation. I think it'll be between Mick Fitz and Davy Byrne. But I think what it'll be is they're going to try to get him, as I said, on the back foot and get him going forward. And I think Kerry will be wary of that because of Dublin's pace coming out of defence.
And funny, we had said it was Mick Fitz that generally speaking picked Clifford up last year in that semi-final, and like we said, look, if you keep him to 7 or 8 points, you're doing well. Clifford last year in that semi kicked 6 points, 4 from play, 1 free, 1 mark, which isn't a bad return for someone marking David Clifford, I guess.
Well, I think if you keep it in single figures, you're doing well. Because well, that's it. I think you are, because I look around the rest of the team and I go, are the rest of them going to get 9 scores?
Do they have an over-reliance?
Get 9 points?
Is there an over-reliance on Clifford and O'Shea from Kerry's perspective?
Well, there is, but they're 2 of the best forwards in the country, so I'll take that over-reliance. I wouldn't mind having them.
That's the thing. One of the greatest footballers of all time, you're going to be trying to make use of as best you can. Will they be wanting to get, you mentioned about the clean sheet stuff, is it 8 or 9 games now? I see John Fogarty every game is tweeting that he's reached such a landmark of clean. Will that be in their mind that we'll need a goal here at some point?
I think they will, because of the way Dublin like, it's funny, everyone thought the last day Kerry-Derry would be a bore fest and would be, you know, and I think we had 6 goal chances in like the first 7 or 8 minutes. Like, it was just bananas. And it was also due to the pace that people were attacking and the willingness to get in behind. And I think that is a big thing. I think that, look, a lot, you know, Gavin White and also O'Shea needs massive credit for what they're doing from a Kerry point of view. You know, they Morley and the rest of these guys keep the house clean, and they just get up front and they cause mayhem as well. Okay, so, you know, they can pick off scores, but I think they realise, and of course you have to realise, and this is, I think, is another trap that Derry fell into, where they failed to get the ball to McGuigan in that second half enough. You know, you could see him crying out sometimes, especially when Lynch came up. Remember, he got blocked 2 or 3 times. You get the ball to your most dangerous man, and you continue to get the ball to your most dangerous man, whether he's 1 man on him, 2 men on him, or 3 men on him. You get that ball to him because he will make decisions, and Clifford has the awareness, he has the ability, and he has the skill set to change his mind instantly and to change what he's doing with the ball instantly. So all of a sudden you think, actually, he's going to probably go for his own score, and then he's pinging a pass 30 or 40 yards. It is going to be, I think, Dublin, I think, Adrian, to go back to your point, I think Dublin will never shirk from that type of a challenge. I think for them to say, okay, we're going to put 2 or 3 guys beside, I think that would be a slight, nearly a bowing down to Kerry, and I don't think that would be in their psyche coming into this DNA game. You know, I just don't think it would be, and I don't think it's in the psyche of this particular team. So I think they'll say, Mick Fitz, you did a hell of a job on him before. We trust you to do it again. No bother to you, and we'll also give you we'll give you a hand when he receives it. Just hold him up that first time, and we'll get players.
What did McManus get the last day?
I must have got 3 or 4. I think from play,
Fitzsimon,
which is not bad.
We're talking about a player who's maybe reaching the end of his inter-county career. Jeez, like he did a good job on him. Like,
probably got 5 or 6 overall, including frees, but like that again, that's not bad for.
Yeah, he did. I think Fitzsimon did a very good job on him. We were talking about this in that first 40 minutes. I thought he blunted him to a large degree. I thought from 50 minutes on, McManus really came alive, and I really do. I think. You know, he has that. Look, an awful lot of the time it's the unseen stuff as a defender, right? Just stuff you don't see in TV, where a player looks up to give the pass, and next thing you're reading it, and he has to change his mind and go back. There's, so 7 times that could happen, and then the one ball goes in, Clifford gets it and bangs it over the bar, and you say, "Jeez, Mick Fitz is under pressure," but he's actually after cutting out 6 or 7 balls. So he is very, very good at that. You know, he is, and he's very sticky, and he's also a guy that believes in himself, and he won't drop the head.
Bit of cuteness about him as well. Like, you can see him against McManus, but there's that disparity in size. You need a bit of
absolutely, and I think there is obviously that little bit of disparity, because the Clifford on most defenders will have that edge. So I think, look, do they rely on him? Paddy, I think Paddy has struggled, I feel, to remove the shackles of a really tight, sticky defender. Yeah, I think he has. I think his idea, which was probably something where he would drop really deep, and that's what sometimes fellas do, and then try to get the ball as he meanders back up the pitch. Fellas are realising that and saying, actually, we just tag him all the way. We'll just go with him all the way. So even if he drops back into his own 21, we pick him up there. And Merchant will have no issue with that. And Merchant will run all day. And Merchant will put him under pressure. So I think that kind of, if you're rating that one, you're kind of saying, Paddy has to. Now, what to do? They might just leave Paddy inside.
Yeah.
I say, well, actually, don't worry about it, Paddy. You go inside and we'll throw, because I think Kerry have to throw something different. They can't just say, okay, it's going to be Davy against the rest. They have to give them something different to think about. And I don't think you can necessarily do it with Geaney. You can't do it with Spillane, right, or O'Brien. So you need to do it with Seanie O'Shea, Clifford, or Seanie O'Shea or Paddy. One of the big ones. They're your 2 boys that you need to throw something different at it.
Discipline is going to be important as well. I presume David Goff's role will be heavily weighted as well, because
last of Meath man appeared at Croke Park and All Ireland final day. Although, to be fair,
but both Dermot O'Connor, like Kerry and Dermot O'Connor, and Dublin and Niall Scully both with black cards in their semi-finals as well, which you probably can't afford either of them to do again this weekend. So it's little silly things maybe that
it's silly. Correct, it's silly things, and by the way, it does put you under massive pressure. We saw, obviously, as you say, O'Connor in the Derry game, and how much Brendan Rodgers made hay at that time. It's going to be, I think Goff will hopefully let it flow. I really hope he will, because it needs to be let flow. There's the game has become so fast and so skillful and so athletic that there's no more of these. There's no more dirt, shall we say?
He says with a twinge of regret.
Sadness in the eyes.
There's no presence anymore. But it is happening in at massive pace. I think his officiating of that Clifford actual that will be interesting. Because as a referee, I can imagine you go in, and no matter what you say, your mind is coloured somewhat with the idea that, well, I am probably officiating against the greatest player that we've seen, and therefore he will be getting extra, give him something kind of deep. So even though you don't want to keep your eye on it, you're probably watching it a lot. And again, Dublin will probably play a few mind games to try to aid that. But look, Kerry are well adept at doing that, and Derry people would say that McGuigan got a bit of close contact in the last day. But it's I think the officiating will hopefully balance itself out. I think the free taking and all of that will be a big thing, and I think Costello has been very, very good for Dublin. I think he's been one of Dublin's shining lights, and you mentioned that team. Like, if you think of a full forward line, which I would expect it to be, which would be Costello, O'Callaghan and Mannion, I think potentially Pascal comes out to that 11 role to create a bit of mayhem. That depends if he has trained well and if he hasn't, the head hasn't dropped too much in the last few weeks. And then I think Scully will retain his spot. I think he got an injury prior to that black card, and he just seemed out of sorts, and as soon as he came on, they whipped him off. So I think he will retain his spot, and I think Howard will be on the other side, and I think that's your 6, and I think they will keep Kilkenny in reserve. I could be completely wrong. Paddy Small will obviously be there. Like, there's a lot of impact there to come on for Dublin. I just feel there's a bit more. I think if they keep it tight, I think that last 10 minutes is going to be where Dublin potentially stretch ahead. In a word, prediction, I was chatting to Mike Frank Russell yesterday, and his word back to me was replay. So how are you calling it? Do they even do replays anymore?
There's no
the final only.
Only for the final. They'll do extra time. And then
CPA put the end to that.
Who and by how many points?
I think Dublin by 2.
Okay, interesting.
Thanks. I'll carry
that. It'll all start in the YouTube comments.
Exactly.
But there's always
DMs are open.
So don't worry about
it. There's the call out from Anthony Moyles. Anthony, great stuff as always. Thanks for hopping in. 8:50 AM on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, the sports breakfast show and off the ball. Time to mention, I should mention, last week our own Cameron Hill went out to Abbottstown to quiz James Lowe, Gary Ringrose and Tyke Byrne at the launch of the new Ireland Rugby World Cup kit, the official Ireland Rugby World Cup 2023 kit and new training range, all with thanks to Intersports Elvery's, official sports retailer partner to the IRFU, supporting Irish rugby. Here is a clip, the full chat available on the OTB Podcast Network, across our social channels as well. Up next, Keith Wood and his current Rugby World 15.
Who competes in the Bledis World Cup?
Australia, New Zealand.
Correct. Who has the Heineken Cup Champions Cup the most times? Who's won it?
Toulouse.
Who kicked the series winning kick for South Africa against the British and Irish Lions in 2009?
Moyles.
Which winger scored twice for South Africa in the 2019 Rugby World Cup final?
Colby.
Did you help him?
I was going to guess Colby.
You were going to guess Colby.
You got everyone right there, no?
Yeah.
How'd I go?
Should I just forfeit now?
Do you want to forfeit now? Do you not enjoy the spirit
Would I
of the
have
game?
gotten any of those? I don't
You
know.
would have got Moyles.
I don't think his name would have come to me.
Yeah, there's the lads having a little mini crappy quiz. The RFU launched the new kit 8:52 AM on Wednesday morning's OTB AM with myself and Adrian right through until 10 o'clock. This morning we'll have plenty more build up to the Republic of Ireland versus Canada with Meabh De Burca shortly, but first it is time to bring in Keith Wood this morning. Morning Keith, how are things?
Good morning, gents. How are you?
Keeping well. Thanks for hopping on. We're always finding new ways to stress you out and come up with lists and numbers and names. But this is not an easy one either. But it's your current World 15. Was this a stressful one?
Yeah, it was a stressful one. I'm beginning to dislike the texts that are coming in from producer Colm on a Tuesday. He's ruining every single Tuesday night for me. I hate lists with a passion. I mean, it's like, you try as you get older to do things that you really like to do, and I'm having to do something I don't like all the time. I hate bests of. They give me ire, to be honest. But the idea of trying to go through it is it's interesting. We'll know the truth of it, I think, in a couple of months' time. That's the other part. And that's why this is awkward, because you're putting your head in a block for guys who could, gain form, lose form, injured, whatever it is. But what are the criteria? The lack of criteria for Colm is just quite extraordinary. I mean, he hangs me out to dry pretty much every Wednesday morning. So there's no criteria. It's just a message. Who do you think the best team in the world are? Which is bloody awful, actually. There's nothing nice in this at all. So I was pretty busy yesterday, and I was doing this into the very close to midnight before I sent it over to you.
There's not a man in the world.
It's still rubbish.
For as much as you hate those lists, there's not a man alive who loves a list more than Colm. And the less details you get around it, the better, as far as he's concerned. Are you, with these lists, are you cosseting yourself away? Are you dropping out a few texts to a couple of old pals, or how do you go about it? Particularly with a list like that, that's like, it's pretty fraught.
Well, it's important not to hang your friends out to dry either, but I hang my sons out to dry, and I put them, and then of course they got angry with Colm last night, so he has to be careful when he ever comes down to the Wood household. But it's difficult. It's trying to figure it out, and then you get excited by certain ones, and then you're kind of struggling. It's strange. I really struggled in the front row. And that would be my former area of expertise. And because in terms of pure standouts, there are a lot of really good practitioners. So you could actually pick pretty much any of them. And then you look at the back row, and you have a multitude of standouts. And so that makes it really, really interesting. So my list is a list of sorts. And let's put it down as more a discussion document than a definitive list. And now that's about 15 caveats I've put in already this morning. But that just shows you how uncomfortable I am with it. So
I guess in a World Cup, you are this close to a World Cup, Keith, there has to be a little bit of shithousery here. You don't want to pick too many Irish lads. You want to kind of be a bit like a Kerry man and play down the chances here.
Yeah, you know what? I try not to do that. I mean, I get caught up in the excitement as everybody else does when we do well, but I try not to. And I think when you're looking at what's a World 15, you're trying to say who are the best players in the world at this moment in time. Now, that could be different from 3 months ago, and it could be different from 3 months from now. And it's why I hate lists. So when you go and look at these things and you say, who are the great players that you've played with or against, or who are the great players that you've watched, you can talk about them, but don't put them in order of form, because again, the criteria are so wide. Are they coming back from injury? Are they not coming back from injury? Have they enough experience, or have they pure youths with no fear? What sort of team are they playing with? Is that team a winning team? You can have great players who aren't playing in winning teams. You can have players that are very, very good, but when they play with the All Blacks, they win 91% of their matches, or whatever it is. So it becomes easier for them. So you can back yourself into psychosis trying to get your head around this entirely. So I like it for a discussion, but it isn't definitive. That's why I hate lists, but it's good for fun. I try not to pick Irish players if I don't think they're good enough, actually, as opposed to trying to say I'm not picking them for shithousery and trying to lull people into a false sense of security. I also, I just think there's fun in it too, but fun and a little bit of grief.
I'm looking at the names, so we'll get into it, Keith, and your 15, because it's some unbelievable names in here, in fairness. So we'll start with the wingers. So I think you've got Hugo Keenan. You've got
Keenan fullback.
Sorry, Keenan fullback, of course. Will Jordan is in there. You have, sorry, I'm just trying to make sense of this. So you have Damien Penaud as well, the Bordeaux winger.
It's very hard to make sense of this because there isn't just 15 names on that list.
Well, some positions are
kind. Not to say. Look, I think if I look at Keenan first. There's loads of players that you can put in. You can put in Ramos, who's been phenomenal. Barrett at 15 is phenomenal. I'm just looking at a level of consistency of performance, of excellent performance. And I think he makes pretty much any list at the moment. I'm a big fan. He's an unlikely looking rugby player. He's not huge, but his effectiveness is incredible. So I enjoy watching him. I'm excited watching him, and maybe that's one of the factors for my list, or who are the ones that kind of raise the blood level, that say, wow, he's a guy that you'd want to see in a rugby field.
Keenan, I think he probably has to be in any World 15, doesn't he, at the moment, certainly on form. And he's timed it perfectly, Keith, as well, hasn't he? Because in a World Cup year, to be reaching these levels of his powers is just incredible. It's almost Stockdale 2018. You want to be peaking at the right time.
Yeah, it's look, you want to peak all the time. You wouldn't believe how greedy sportsmen are. They want their that sweet spot to, where they're in their zone or things are going right for them. They want that to extend to a career. They don't want it for a period of time. I just think he has played very, very well. I'm going to be really interested to see how, not just the Irish guys, but actually the Northern Hemisphere guys in particular, how they come out of this World Cup training camps, to see how they are, whether they're rejuvenated or whether they're knackered. Because we've seen in times past where 2007, when went to the World Cup with a really good team, and they just seem to have got their training wrong. They came out of it flat. They didn't quite get to the beat of any of the games, and they limped out of the World Cup. And it was a shame for the quality of the team that we had. And you can see even on the last World Cup, it didn't work either. So I'm interested to see what Farrell has managed to do with the Irish team, what Borthwick has managed to do with the English team, because they've been a bit of a shambles. So. And then, of course, what Galtier has done with the French team, because they've been on a high for so much, and their club teams have been on a high. How are they actually going to get to the level that they want to in their home World Cup? So, yeah, I'm kind of intrigued with some of those sort of things.
As we work through the team, the one thing about the list, Keith, is that we'll find in the comments that people are, how has he not mentioned X, right? And no matter if you were going till tomorrow, you won't have mentioned the A to Z enough for people. But just in terms, will you talk us through any of the options that you feel are mention worthy, particularly in relation to the wings there, other players that might have come into your thinking?
Well, look, I've Jordan and Penaud on the wings. It was really interesting watching Penaud at the end of the season make 2 mistakes and then be the difference for them winning that championship match. I just love the ability of a player that makes a mistake, doesn't go into a shell, is actually amazing. There's very few people do that. Most, when you make a mistake, and you'd recommend from a psychological point of view, you try and do the next couple of things simply. But it's the truly great ones are the ones that make a mistake and then still have the confidence and the skill level and the attention to be able to do something magnificent. So I think he offers something amazing. Will Jordan has been a big loss. He's been injured for a while, lost for in New Zealand. Him back gives them a cutting, threatening edge, sort of thinking edge from the back three that they haven't had for a while. And they always seem to have a couple of those players that are just different, like electric pace. So if I was looking at him, I'd be saying he's a guy to watch out for in the World Cup. I think he'll be extraordinary.
In the centre, Keith, you've gone for Lukanyuam, who can also play on the wing, of course, with the Sharks, and Jonathan Daunty, who, of course, Rog has spoken about plenty on this show. So that's not a bad set of partnership.
No, you could have Barrett, the other Barrett, or one of the other Barretts in the centre as well, because he's now seeming to make 12 his own in New Zealand. Of course, you could have Henshaw isn't far away from that at all. Ringrose isn't far away from 13. Dante causes carnage wherever he is and still has a level of subtlety, and I think he's one of the most influential players. Again, coming back from injury, he's a guy he is getting his timing right coming back for it. Lucanio Am for me is, I think, consistently underrated as a 13. He kind of gets bypassed because of his subtlety in a Springbok team, but he gives them a really good cutting edge. The speed that they have on the outside are only ever released because of the timing of his pass often. And so I'm a fan of his, and again, he hasn't quite been at the height, but I think he'll be a guy to watch out for the World Cup.
Yeah, and Canio Am as well. There's talk of Sia Khaleesi is absent at the moment with a bit of an injury, but his name has been mentioned. Canio Am as one of these leaders in that South African panel, I guess, that could pick up the captaincy if needed. So clearly, he's one of these players that leads as well as does.
Yeah. Look, it looks like it consistently. I mean, I know that there was a view in past times that Dialende would have captaincy type material. I don't know that that's ever really come to the fore. But I think if you can have a cool head, and Lucanio Am tends to have that cool head in the field.
Number 10, you've gone with another All Black, Richie Mo'unga.
I have, just because I was watching him play. He's had a battle for most of his career to try and get into the 10 jersey, and Bowden Barrett being pretty incredible, McKenzie being pretty incredible, and Mo'unga, I just watched him play last weekend, and this is absolute recency bias. I just thought he really, really managed the game incredibly well, but also took control for some of the longer kicks, which he doesn't ordinarily do. And because normally they give it to Jordy Barrett because he can bang it over from pretty much anywhere, and was nailing everything. I thought he showed a level of control, and it looks like the All Blacks are getting a sense of control that they lost for a while. And I thought they were really impressive last week. So, look, it's him. It could be Andre Pollard, who's injured. Johnny, of course, who has been injured since February. That's one of the reasons he's not in there. But I think if you're looking at even the last couple of weeks, he showed a level of maturity that that the All Blacks need, actually, because they often rely almost entirely on talent, but you need your 10 to have that real maturity to manage the game as much as possible and manage the players around him, and I thought he did that.
We're not going to have any debate about 9, so let me ask you just one on that. If you were on that 10, if you're picking a team to start a World Cup final tomorrow in some hypothetical scenario like we're in at the minute, and you're saying it is Mo'unga over Sexton et al.
Yeah, I see. That's why this whole argument falls down, Adrian, and that's why it was great to see you a couple of weeks ago. I've now gone off you already, So that idea,
Adrian, I call him now. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, of those hypotheticals, like Mo'unga is playing really well in an All Black team. I have to say, I think Johnny Sexton could play well in a lot of different teams. But they'd have to be, because he tends to make an awful lot more decisions in a game. And I think the way Ireland are set up is it is on your 10 making as many decisions in a game as you possibly can. And with Johnny making the right decision. But he has 5 or 6 options every single time he gets the ball. That's the difference. So I think you can drop him in anywhere. But that's where this argument kind of falls down. It all depends on the style you're going to play. It all depends on, are you going to play very much a kicking game or, a running game, whatever it is. So again, I don't have a proper answer for that. I'm falling into a toilet of words there, trying to justify. It's impossible one to,
and it's because is X a better player than Y, but then also all the intangibles like leadership and experience and.
It's why I'm going to block Colm from Tuesday texts. I think that's probably...
I think we could all learn a lesson from that.
Because then you have to also think about it. Is this a World 15 that would play well together, or is this a World 15 based on are they the best in their individual positions? But of course, Keith Colm did not make that clear, which makes your job even more difficult.
The 5-word texts tend to be the norm with Colm, so we're not talking about clarity in any way.
Colm's getting thrown under the bus here. Richie Moyles got a definite good pick either way. Keith at number 10, and a lovely try at the end of that game against South Africa recently as well. It timed his run perfectly. So no one's going to judge you for that one. No one's going to judge you for your choice at number 9. As Adrian said, there's probably no point dwelling on it. Antoine Dupont, I think, is the best number 9 in the world.
He is. It's funny because watching again last weekend, looking at Aaron Smith's display of, I would say, technical brilliance, his fitness, over 100 caps, still looks as fresh as a daisy. The quality of his passing is phenomenal. His fitness, Fafter Clerk, who was buzzing like a swirling dervish for the length of time he was on. They're phenomenal, and we're blessed, I think, at the moment with the quality of them. But Dupont just holds out a different, and it's different as well because in France the guy who runs the game is a 9. It's not a 10. So you'll often see Dupont take the ball and run backwards. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do, which Galtier used to do 20 years ago, and but his strength, his capacity to link, his thinking around the game is just phenomenal. So he gets it, of course he does.
Zero arguments on that pick. Number 8, Keith, you've got a choice here. So this is a difficult one: Caelan Doris or Gregory Aldred.
Well, look, the back 3 I found to be incredibly difficult. Look, I'm Caelan Doris all the way. And I know Jack Conan has done incredibly well. I still think Ireland are a better team with Caelan Doris at 8. You have Aldred, who I have to say is one of my favourite players. Yeah. I've watching the back row. If you were picking a back row, you'd pick en masse. You'd pick the French back row. You'd pick Aldred, Olivan, and Challenge. They're extraordinary, and they're a joy to watch in the physicality, but also the skill level. But I think Doris has. At 8, because it just seems to be his more natural position, he seems to have that extra little bit of time to make his decisions, the extra little bit of space, his feet before contact, the growth actually in his ability to take a risk with the pass, and then complete the pass. So everybody can take a risk with a pass, falling or under huge contact, but it's then making certain that it actually works. That's I just think he's as good as we've two guys in the pack for me that are as good as we've seen in Ireland. So I think that's very rare to have that anyway, and I think that's kind of a joy. So I'd go for him over Aldred, even though Aldred's one of my favourite rugby players to watch. Okay.
A blindside, you mentioned him already, Olivan, of course, unbelievable for Toulon last year as well, and open side. Again, this is a kind
of a bit of a blend of both. So I'm not exactly right with it. I've gone for Ardi Sevilla in the back row as well with Olivan. Olivan again was injured for a huge period of time, came back and reached a level of performance and an extra level of subtlety to France's back row, which I thought was amazing. Ardi Sevilla has been one of those dolls you can't knock over, they just kind of rock back up onto their feet. He's consistently been, the best back row forward in New Zealand for about 5 years.
Anthony Jalanche is a name you mentioned, is another option there, and Josh van der Fleer, I guess.
Van der Fleer has been Van der Fleer is integral to every single thing that Ireland do. He plays at a really great level of performance. I don't know that he's quite at the same level as he was last year, and so I'll be interested to see how he reacts to that for this World Cup. So, and it's not that he has dropped but I think some other guys are bringing more to their game. I'm arguing with myself. I love Van der Fleer. I just think he plays brilliantly all the time. So look, we could put a load of Irish guys down here and a load of French guys, intersperse it with a few South Africans, and that's actually what we've done pretty much. South Africans and a couple of All Blacks.
It's a nice mix. Yeah. And even in the second row, you've got Brodie Retallick and I think Eben Etzebeth as your final two picks.
Yeah, I'm a little bit bored myself with that, because those guys have been around for quite a while. I love Flamand. I think he's fantastic. I even have Skelton in there because he's been the bane of so many teams at a club perspective. I don't think he's quite having that impact at international now. He's back in the Australian setup again. I thought Retallick was incredible again last week, and Etzebeth is. Do you know what? He's a big guy, but I watched him beside R.G. Snyman the other day, and he looked almost bigger than Snyman, and Snyman is a giant, and look, the impact he has and the impact he will have on this World Cup, I think, will be pretty stark.
Loosehead Andrew Porter, close but no cigar.
I don't know, and maybe this could be part of that shithousery or not. I think Porter has been very good. He needs to stop giving away penalties. That's one of the important things. And I said I struggled when I got to the front row, actually. I like Stephen Kitsoff, though he always came off the bench. Now he seems to be starting far more often. I think he's had a fairly large impact. He's a good player. There's any that you could go with. I went with Kitsoff on this, and I think that could be part of that. Let's not pick too many Irish guys. And then, of course, I went with Dan Sheehan at hooker, and I didn't go with anybody else. I just think he's phenomenal. So and this is a great World Cup. He's at a great age for it. He's got a lot of matches under his belt. He's got a work ethic that's pretty phenomenal. He has got Ronan Kelleher pushing behind him, which you can't understate. That he's not allowed to rest on his laurels in any way, shape or form. Again, I think his feet and contact are incredible. His speed is incredible. I think this is his World Cup.
I sort of watching the rugby of the last few weeks, Keith, and listening to you now over the last 20 minutes, I have a growing sweaty palms and concern over the World Cup, where we had sort of collectively reached a decision that New Zealand were not the New Zealand that we thought they were. And listen to you there and the picks that you have in the team, how eloquently you speak about the New Zealand players you've included, and having watched them over the last couple of weeks, I have a growing concern that in a couple of months, a few weeks' time, we're going to be reinstalling them as the hot favourites to win the World Cup.
Well, there's a couple of mad things. That's an entirely different conversation, but our bread and butter and what keeps the game alive in Ireland is the Six Nations, and that is of huge importance. You can't suddenly pick 15 new guys and say let's try and do this entirely differently. And we have now built up a level of consistency in Six Nations, which is very good for the coffers and keeps the game alive and floating in Ireland, right? So that's a really big thing. It also is a fantastic annual competition that fits into the bleakness of winter and gives people something to support and live for and all that sort of stuff. It's great for the hotels. It's great for everything, right? So all that stuff is fantastic. But the teams that have been more world leaders tend to be England will always do well in the World Cup. They have capacity to do it. Australia do incredibly well in World Cup, even with not a huge number of players. New Zealand are traditionally in around 90%, and they try and peak for World Cups, and they've won a couple. And it annoys them that they've only won a couple. Like, they're almost embarrassed that they haven't won them all. And that's the standard that they take into it. and they got lots of they lost their way for a period of time. A lot of players after Carter held such a huge influence over New Zealand for so long. I think he papered over a fair bit of cracks in the team because he was so brilliant, actually, and was able to pull the strings when he needed to. And at the end of that, I think they've lost their way a little bit. And I think there's huge pressure on Foster. I think Joe Schmidt's having a fairly big influence in there in terms of some of the structure that's required. It isn't just down to the skills and capabilities of the players. You have to think your way through it an awful lot more. They could rely on their skills for so long when they had a guy like Carter at 10. It's become harder for them. So I think they're growing into it, and I think they'll be phenomenal in the World Cup. And their performance in the last couple of weeks have shown a side to them we haven't seen for 2 or 3 years. Now that doesn't mean that the other teams don't know how to unpick them. So for me, I can't wait for the World Cup for that reason. And then you have South Africa. South Africa peak and organise every single thing that they have to achieve in the World Cup. Actually, to achieve in the World Cup and to achieve against New Zealand. That's pretty much the South African way. And so I think they'll be fantastic in the World Cup.
That rounds out your team nicely, Keith. So you had Kits off at loose head just ahead of Porter. You had Dan Sheehan, Tucker, and Antonio, who we didn't mention as the tight head prop as well. La Rochelle man. So look, not an easy one. 3 Irish names in Keenan, Doris, and Sheehan. I think that tempers the expectations nicely. So well done, Keith. Not an easy job. You can block Colm now and sleep well after that.
I'll have to sleep well, yeah. I get a little bit of abuse, but that's okay too.
That's fine, sure, we all do. It's great. Keith, brilliant stuff. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Keith.
Cheers, gents.
Great stuff. 9:19 a.m. on Wednesday morning's OTB AM, the sports breakfast show and off the ball. After the break, we'll have the former Irish international Meabh De Burca in studio, continuing our build up to the Republic of Ireland versus Canada at 1 o'clock Irish time this afternoon. First, though, more from Dublin Kerry and his thoughts on the Dublin Kerry rivalry. By the way, you can catch my full chats with Dublin Kerry, with Charlie Redmond, and other bits and bobs from the Dublin camp as well this week in the build up. Sean Potts as well from the Piper's Corner pub on the OTB Podcast Network and across our social channels ahead of Sunday's All-Ireland Showdown. Back in a sec. What are your memories of the Dublin Kerry rivalry over the years? I suppose this is another rendition of it this weekend, but over the years it's been one that's, even in the mid-80s, those couple of finals that Kerry came on top of, it's always been a bitter enough rivalry, but also a bit of respect there as well.
Oh yeah, total respect, yeah. The O'Shea's, the Donahue's, the Gills, I know them all. Great to meet them away from Croke Park, have a few points to crack on the banter, you know. But Paddy O'Shea, Larby got to him, said to me one time, you know, Dublin Kerry boy, you will never win an All-Ireland properly, boy, till you beat Kerry in the final. So 2-11 that night in the border, we came out and bought me a point, yeah. Another great statement. Paddy said to me, says, you know, Jerry Dub boy, 1 All-Ireland in the back pocket is good as 10 boy. Another great statement. Our great Jimmy Keaveney, the great Jimmy Keaveney, made a great statement years ago, and I still use it to today. It's not the medals at home that there are, it's the people you meet. And he's 110% correct in making that statement, yeah. I've met hundreds all over the country, yeah, and remain good friends with them, you know.
You're listening
to OTB AM. The Koigig Pod on OTB Sports.
Tune in and support us, please. We need every little bit of support. We might be outnumbered here in Australia, but we can definitely feel the love from back home. We've wanted to be here, and we've wanted to be here for so long, so at the same time we want to show what we're capable of and play to our strengths too, and see how it goes.
Subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Yeah, more build up to the Republic of Ireland versus Canada in the World Cup this afternoon. 1 o'clock kick-off, delighted to say. Meabh De Burca, Irish international, joins us in studio. Meabh, good morning, how are things?
All good, yeah, a bit nervous, but
I was going to say, I was just chatting to you during the ad break there, I'm nervous as well. Like, is that just because the jeopardy is on the line today, that it's all kind of come down to this and the dominoes not to be negative, could come falling down today after such a long build-up?
That's it. It's going to be a monumental day either way, I think. Hopefully for all good reasons, and hopefully they can get a result and keep the World Cup dream alive.
There's been a bit of smack talk, maybe not as much smack talk as in advance of the Australia game, but the Canada manager talking about the quality, hoping his team can bring out their quality. Felt like a slight dig in terms of the maybe a lack of quality comparatively with Ireland, but you kind of like to see that sort of thing in a build up to a game. It adds a bit of juice to it.
Exactly, yeah. There's definitely a bit of kind of spice before this one, and she did mention in the press conference that it's going to be a bit of two-way traffic. She referred to Ireland as being a horrible team to play against, but then also in turn said, well, it's two-way traffic basically, and that Canada are not the nicest team to play against either. So I think it'll be interesting. We only played them once before, so that was nearly a decade ago at this stage. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Because they don't score many goals. I guess if Canada had beaten Nigeria 3 or 4-0, we'd be going into this game with a little bit of trepidation. But the performance from the Canadians wouldn't have filled their fans full of optimism, because they really are struggling in recent games to score goals.
They are, and I mean, for a team that's ranked 7th, the pressure is on them, and have been a relatively, although obviously Australia are there as well, it should have been a relatively easy group. They wouldn't have looked at the group as been very difficult. So the opening day draw for them was a disappointment, and like I said, the lack of goals is worrying as well. But they have Jessie Fleming coming back, and she's kind of like a playmaker, so I think it might change with her introduction maybe today.
Because all the Canadian play, by all accounts, comes through her. So I guess that is one excuse for that Nigerian performance. Like, how big is the return of Jessie Fleming? I guess it gives Vera Pauw a massive headache that otherwise wouldn't have been there.
Yeah, I mean, she also takes penalties, and Sinclair missed a penalty in the last game. Not saying Jessie would have definitely scored, but she has a good record, and she scored in the Olympics a couple of penalties, and as well in the penalty shootout in the Olympics. So yeah, it definitely gives Vera Pauw an added dimension to try to I suppose keep Jessie Fleming under control, and that's always going to kind of take up then maybe one of our players. Could be possibly Denise, who'll end up in there because she is holding mid at the moment, or Rusha as well. So it kind of it's just another dimension, like I said, and it kind of may take away from our game going forward, as if we needed anything else to take away from it going forward, because we're already limited enough in how we do attack the games.
You've been covering a lot of the games, Meabh, across the board, and we were chatting to Linda earlier on about there's been some surprise results obviously, and our own 1-0 against Australia was nearly a surprise almost in itself. But is there a bit of do you think internally, because you can have tournaments like that where the underdog is causing a lot of upsets, and it can be a bit of a momentum thing almost with teams that they can kind of tap into that? Is that nonsense from the outside, or could there be something in that from the Ireland team point of view today, in the sense that they're looking around them, they're looking at their own performance and thinking, whereas this might have been a ludicrous notion a couple of months ago, suddenly everything's on the table today?
Yeah, and in particular, I think Philippines beating New Zealand yesterday was a huge result, because that was the first time the debutants scored and won. So yeah, I think in the opening day, all the teams that were at their first World Cup, the 8 of them all lost. So Ireland obviously amongst them. So yeah, I think the gaps are definitely closing, and I think just Philippines yesterday was really was definitely a shock result, and like that, Ireland, I think they'll be happy if they can pull off another shock result today as well. Definitely.
How good is Christine Sinclair? Because you look at her, still looking to score in her 6th World Cup, which is an unbelievable record. Like her numbers are just 190 goals, 324 games, beggars belief. But she's, even at 40, she's still a very, very big danger.
Yeah, insane really, that she is operating at that level, at 40. Like you said, it's not really heard of, apart from Martha, I suppose, who's also still operating, albeit as a sub. But I think Sinclair is definitely, she's a very powerful and different player to what they'd be used to. But the likes of Louise Quinn and Aoife Ayu, would be used to that kind of physicality and that. And it's hard to tell what she'll do, but I would expect her to be dropped in place of Fleming today. But either way, if she's on the bench, then it's not someone that you want to see coming on the pitch, in the last half an hour or however long she gets. But it's a daunting task. But like that, I mean, Ireland have been faced up with a lot of technical and difficult forwards in the past, so I'm sure they'll be well equipped, with everything, with video analysis, everything now. They'll know her strengths and their weaknesses to a T, so they'll be able to deal with her, hopefully.
We were chatting this morning about Vera Pauw pointing out the lack of pace at the Irish backline, and even after the Australia game against Marissa Shiva, bore the brunt of some of, if not all of, the blame. based on that defeat. What do you make of all of that? Like, managers making comments, I guess, to the media that maybe could be done behind closed doors, maybe are being done behind closed doors regardless, but maybe the timing is a bit strange.
It is, and I think in the aftermath of, your opening first game in a World Cup, to single out a player as her causing the mistake that resulted in her loss, I think it's unfair, like you said, to do it publicly with the global audience really watching. It's I don't think, just as a manager, I don't think it was done right. I think, like I said, behind closed doors, fair enough, but really, I said previously that the situation was that Marissa isn't a defender, and she was only back there because Katie McCabe had been caught up the pitch, and she was filling in for Katie in that spot. So, it's either a case of, I think, and obviously Vera Pauw keeps saying how they need to get Katie up the pitch higher, and that, well, in that case, just do it. Like, I don't think, I think either play her at left back and let her play at left back, or don't try to have her play as a left wing and then half the time come back and defend, the other half the time have other players filling in for her. I think we saw in the end she brought on Izzy Atkinson purely to release Katie McCabe, so I think it just, she kind of needs to make up her mind about it, because obviously we'd all love to have 11, well 10 maybe Katie McCabe's. I'd still probably stick with Courtney in goal, but it's just not realistic. She can only play one position, so we just, like I said, we need to try to get the best out of her. But similar to Denise O'Sullivan, I think she's been held back a lot just to so the new American based players can fill in attacking mid roles, whereas Denise would have always played a number 10 spot for Ireland. And people say how she's not getting forward as much, but that's obviously now she's playing as one of the holding mids alongside Rusha Littlejohn. So I do think it takes away a lot from, I would say, arguably our best player, that she can't be playing for us in an attacking sense, just to I suppose make space for the new additions.
It was interesting, like on that point, a few weeks ago when the Vera Pauw US stuff had cropped up again, and Katie McCabe was in one of the press conferences and was like giving a defence of her and was saying that, well, we do have we do fall out at times and we do end up having rows and stuff, which I was kind of interested about. I presume probably the vast majority of that is about, would you just let me get up the pitch? I presume that's a major factor for her personally as well, and gets amplified even more when you're at a World Cup and you want to be showing your best stuff.
That's the thing, and I suppose with Arsenal she might have a bit more freedom to go forward as well, and they've a lot of versatile players there who can fill in. But I think with us, obviously the defensive structure has always been the priority, and it just, I suppose it's a bit unfortunate that at the moment we have, I would say our best two attacking players, Katie McCabe and Denise O'Sullivan, playing defensive roles. So we wonder why we're not getting forward as much, but I suppose that's a lot of the reason, is they're stuck in our own half the whole time. And from Katie's perspective, she doesn't make any. A lot of people say, the likes of Megan Connolly has often come out saying she doesn't care where she plays, just as long as she's helping the team. But Katie has been quite vocal in that she would prefer to be playing higher up the pitch. So it's not an ideal situation, and it's just going to be very interesting to see if she makes any changes today.
Can I ask one follow up to that then? In light of the fact that we know a draw today could be enough, we won't go into all the details, but could be enough to get us through, depending on how things go elsewhere. We shouldn't expect then, given everything that you've just said, given that we're going to be throwing caution to the wind here, we should expect that we'll be sitting back early doors, see how the game pans out, and see where we go from there. Don't be expecting attack and play from the off here.
No, I think we'll still park the double-decker bus, like we always do in front of the goal. I don't foresee any change to that. I think our ambition seems to be always just to try to hold out as long as we can for that 0-0 draw, and it'd be fantastic. I mean, I would be really happy sitting out. I would take a 0-0 draw all day to keep us in the tournament and to keep our hopes alive, because we can look at then the Nigeria game when it comes around. But it's just, like everyone keeps saying, it's just, if we do concede, what happens then? That's always the danger. I suppose that we were going well, and like Vera even said at half time, if we don't make a mistake, we'll get a draw. And I mean, there's always a chance of making a mistake especially when you don't have possession of the ball for long spells. So I don't foresee that we'll do anything different or radical. Maybe in the second half, if things aren't going our way, I think we have to throw caution to the wind at that stage. But in terms of, we may see personnel changes, but in terms of our structure or the tactically the way we play, I think we'll still be sitting deep in that low block like Like, we don't want to get caught, like I said earlier, about the lack of pace at the back. We don't want to get caught high up the pitch and then, end up in turn then having to chase the game and leaving even more gaps in behind.
So even when you see the headlines at the back of the papers as well, may have like show me guts. Vera Pauw, wanting the players to have the guts to fail, as she said in the press conference this week. Like, I almost find that so ironic because have the guts to fail, play Katie, play Denise a bit higher up, bring Amber Barrett off the bench, like maybe in some way, and this is not intended as a dig to Vera Pauw in any sense, but if we are to lose the game 1 or 2-0 today and those two haven't played higher up the pitch or Amber Barrett hasn't come off the bench, maybe the management are the ones that hadn't the guts to fail.
Well, that's the thing, and if she's saying have the guts to fail, it's in direct comparison to what she told the team at half time, not to make any mistake. I mean, if you're telling people to go out and express themselves, then you're going to make mistakes, particularly in the attacking third, because that's how you open up teams. You have to take chances. If it's all just like chess and where the next move is going to be, they're never going to open up the defensive opposition. So it's a bit of an unusual one, I suppose. It's a lot of mind games. Like, really what's important is what's actually happened within their camp as well, and we don't know. I'm sure they're going to be as best prepared as possible. They've a rake of staff there, you can see, and they'll have every detail done, and I think sometimes what's coming out outside might be just a bit of noise, and it's kind of really how they're preparing in the inside that matters.
And maybe the emotion of the Australia game, which was clear, you could see the players smiling in the tunnel coming out, and obviously it was a massive moment, the national anthem and everything else besides 80,000 seater stadium, you're playing the hosts. Maybe some of that is gone now this week, which could be good today, that they can just concentrate on the football. The whole occasion is maybe a little quieter.
Yeah, and the crowd as well, there won't be as much of a hype around it. Obviously the host nation and the opening game, there was just so much publicity and buzz around it that now they're almost in a little, it's just from the outside, it's just another game at the World Cup. It's not a standout game. Obviously for us it's a massive game, so historical in that, but there's definitely not the same sort of hype around it on the outside anyway, and I think that should benefit them, I think, because they can just focus playing 11v11, playing their own game and just seeing how they get on, rather than kind of worrying about the occasion itself.
Should get your predictions. Meabh. Linda Gorman was very optimistic earlier, I have to say, without giving us an exact scoreline. She didn't want to speculate in that sense, but how do you see the game going? I think it's going to be a difficult one. I think especially when Canada didn't win their first game, I think there's a bit more pressure on them. It could have gone to our advantage. Nearly had Canada won almost the first game, so I think I'm hoping for a narrow win for Ireland, actually, from a set piece. But it could be wishful thinking, but at the same time, I mean, it's such a huge game, and I think you can kind of feel that the country's behind them, and I hope that they can put on the performance that I suppose get the result that they're, and hopefully put on the performance as well. What was your prediction, Adrian, earlier? Was it a draw?
1-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 1-0. I won't sit on the fence.
I'm going 1-0 as well.
To Ireland.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, 100%.
So hopefully.
Exactly. Fingers crossed the whole country gets behind the team now this afternoon and get a win. Not even a draw. We don't even.
I mean, if we're in a position that we're talking about the Nigeria game, we're saying, look, we have to back up the candidates. Like,
I know.
Hopefully that's where we're at.
I know.
And a lunchtime kick-off too, so it's not too bad. A lot of people will be able to tune in.
Exactly.
It's a great time.
Yeah, people should be able to watch it on their lunch break or whatever else. Meabh, thanks a million for popping in as always.
Thanks a lot.
Great stuff. Meabh De Burca there with us ahead of the Republic of Ireland versus Canada, which, as we said, 1 o'clock kick-off wherever you're watching. I'm sure most of you will be watching that game this afternoon in the World Cup. Cheers, Adrian, for all today as well.
Channel.
I should mention on tomorrow's show it'll be Ger and special guest co-host Gavin Cooney. I'll be down in Kerry myself getting some build-up ahead of the All-Ireland Senior Football Final this weekend. All the reaction on tomorrow's show to Ireland against Canada, of course. Linda Gorman will be back in studio with the Kerry perspective ahead of that game against the Dubs, and plenty more besides. Right now though, Canada's primary import Kevin Kilbane chatting with Cullum ahead of this lunchtime's blockbuster clash. In the meantime, promise me one thing: have a wonderful Wednesday. Cheers.
Alright, it's Ireland versus Canada, and while it's not quite win or bust for Vera Pauw's side, it could be make or break. A defeat would be a disaster, a draw may leave a chance, and a win against the Olympic champions in Perth would be stupendous. Now, this week we focused a lot on the Irish side of things, of course, but to get the Canadian perspective, we're joined now by Canadian football's answer to Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. It's the one and only Kevin Kilbane.
Colin, how's it going? How are you?
Oh, you wore that compliment very well, actually.
Well, what a combo that is. Would you call that a compliment?
Well, I was going to ask
necessarily.
I was going to ask you, like in Canada, do people compare you to Neville and Carragher? Are you your own man?
People don't know who Carragher and Neville are over here, so pretty much the same as they don't really know too much of the European base. So no, they wouldn't compare me with anybody. I've got no comparison, you know.
I know.
Maybe there's one or two that would compare me with some of the guys that are off the ball, because there's a lot of listeners over here. You'd be surprised.
Well, like what listeners also might be surprised with is that Kevin Kilbane is a regular listener of Off the Ball despite living in Canada, and we get some very honest and direct reviews about the show. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, well, once or twice. I listen all the time. It's great. I get there's a long drive I'll have once or twice a week, so I'll always have you on. So yeah. But you're doing good stuff, Colm. I tell you, you're doing okay. You're
Thanks
doing well.
Very much, yeah.
You're doing well.
Look,
yeah.
Kev, I'm going to take that.
You're asking some very insightful questions when you're doing your interviews, which is always a good sign, you know.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take that sincerely. And we can proceed. Now, look, before we get on to the Canada side of things, because it is interesting, Kev, both on and off the pitch, the Canadian preparation heading into this World Cup. But yeah, I suppose, look, to start off with, what was your own take on Ireland's 1-0 defeat to Australia?
I thought we played well. I thought there were spells in the game where obviously that physical nature that they've brought to the game, which has been which has been spoken about quite a lot over here. Actually, I think they didn't realise the physical nature of the Ireland side, and it's one thing there's a graphic going up on screen in a few of the World Cup games when they've been trying to look forward to this game, of the amount of tackles that Denise O'Sullivan, Katie McCabe and one or two others have been putting in games. So they've been showing this graphic to show the physical side of this Irish side. So I think the more than aware of what the Irish team brings, but overall, I think you guys would have seen it as well. You know that there wasn't a lot of chances created in open play, but you know we've all seen the Irish side over the last couple of years, and there's a very good structure to the team. They're very difficult to break down defensively. They're so well organised. And it's difficult for some of the better players to get really high up the pitch when they're playing from such deep line positions. But I thought they played well, and certainly the last 15 minutes when they had that chance to really go and get forward, I thought they created a lot of openings, should I say, but certainly Australia a lot of problems.
Is there a Katie McCabe shaped conundrum in this Irish team? Like, it's actually good to have you on this, even because you started off as this marauding left winger, like it's so direct and taking on full backs, and it was a breath of fresh air. And then as your career went on, you pushed a bit deeper into left back, and we find ourselves in a situation with Vera Pauw's very inflexible setup, you could say, and I actually don't mean that so negatively. She knows what she wants. You find the quality of McCabe left wing back, is that too deep for her for your liking, or is it actually ideal?
I understand it. I understand because she's got such a good understanding of the game. That's the thing with her. Her intelligence is excellent when she's on the pitch. So I think it's one of those where you're probably going to make she's probably making a sacrifice for the team herself. I think Vera Pauw would even know that herself. She probably could be used better elsewhere. But she, as I said, that understanding that she's got her positional sense at times as well. But she's a class act. I think when the last 10 or 15 minutes I was saying of that game the other day, you could see she was getting more advanced. She was getting more into the game as the game progressed. But I think she brings that physical side to it as well. I think she brings that destruction that she can bring. So I understand it. I think I've heard you guys talking over the last couple of years about this, even during the qualification campaign, about saying, "Oh, you've got to get Kate McCabe further forward." But I think understanding what she brings to the side in that position, her ball carrying ability, her ability to travel from over such a big distance, that is why she's in that position, and that's why she's doing such a good job in there.
And on the Canadian side of things, for our audience who might be too familiar with them, so the reigning Olympic champion, so Bev Priestman took over in 2020. She's an English woman. She's only 37. I think she's the second youngest manager at these championships.
Yeah.
She won the Olympics, and that was an improvement on Canada's two previous Olympics appearances where they got bronze. So they won gold, which is great. But it hasn't been smooth sailing heading to this tournament, to say the least.
No, it was pretty much when I'd spoken to you guys around the men going into Qatar. They've had the same sort of problems with the association, huge problems actually with the association, particularly highlighted, I think, certainly from the women's side on preparation. They've had to. They were like the men last year. They were prepared to go on strike in the She Believes Cup. They've had a lot of issues over, as I say, in preparation, over training days. I mean, again, this is something aside of the equal pay and the financial implications that the players feel they need to address. They've had days where the association can't afford to keep them in a hotel for a certain amount of time in preparation for the tournament. There's no game time or no time on the training field. So they've had a lot of issues regarding that. And they feel there's a lot going against them in every way. They feel as though they don't get the respect globally. That's another issue as well, Colin, that they've got. So they feel as though that they've come together for a purpose. And, that can be dangerous when you see a side when they have that sort of togetherness and that sort of purpose going forward. Maybe a cause, I suppose you would say.
Yeah, because that's so striking to hear that you're talking about the 7th best team in the world in FIFA rankings. They may not act like it at the moment, but that's where they are. And in Christine Sinclair, they have the all-time international top scorer in both men's and women's teams. You look at the back four that played against Nigeria in a very disappointing 0-0 draw where Sinclair missed the penalty, and it's star-studded. You have Ashley Lawrence playing for Chelsea, Buchanan, who's been a slight injury doubt like Louise Quinn, playing for Chelsea, her partner Vanessa Gilles on loan at Lyon, and then Jade Rivera at Manchester United. That's the back four, star-studded, very hard to break down. So you have that on paper, you have world-class players, but why are the conditions so poor?
Yeah, and they feel that Kaylin Sheridan, the goalkeeper, is the best in the world. They feel as though she's not recognised at all. She's the best goalkeeper in the NWSL in North America. So they just feel as though that they don't get any respect. They feel as though that that a lot of the narrative, certainly in North America, is around the US team. Maybe rightly so to an extent, because they are considered the best side in the world, but they feel as though a lot of their players are overlooked, and that's been the narrative. Seeing a lot of the interviews that's coming out around the team. Obviously, Christine Sinclair, who's a legend of the game for everything that she's achieved in it, they feel as though that probably she doesn't even get the recognition that she probably deserves, and that's maybe rightly so as well. So it is interesting listening to them. I've seen a lot of them actually. I certainly saw all the Olympic games when they won the Olympics, and they're very much a defensive setup. I felt through the Olympics. I don't feel it was great. They didn't score any goals from open play in the knockout stages. 2 of those 3 wins were penalty shootouts. But they've got a way of grinding out wins. Maybe a bit of a similar theme to the Irish side as well, that if they're not able to control the ball in games, they're able to grind out results. They have a conundrum, I feel, with Christine Sinclair, because there is a thought over here that maybe she shouldn't be starting games now, maybe she should be coming off the bench, but because of the history, because of the goals that she scored that you've already spoken about, it's going to be hard for Bev Priestman, the coach, to drop her. So that's something that's really in a lot of people's minds here. So it wasn't a great performance in that Nigeria game. I don't think they played well. After the first 15, 20 minutes maybe, I think Nigeria started to really work their way into the game and showed vulnerabilities in the Canada side. And maybe there's a blueprint there for Vera Pauw and for the Irish side to look at, that if you do see a spell through in the game, yes, they missed the penalty, and I know that's right, but overall they didn't really create an awful lot. There was a lot of missed shots from distance. Nigeria sat in well, soaked up pressure, and they were able to break from deep line positions against them with a bit of pace that Nigeria had. So, as I said, it could be something for us to look at, really, and a way to work out how to beat them. But there is quality if given time and space. There is quality in that Canada side,
But the statistics back up that poor run of form that you're mentioning there, Kev. Like, they failed to score in 4 of their last 6 games, and at the same time, while they have a brilliant defence on paper, they've conceded 10 in their last 8. What do Ireland need to do to breach this Canadian defence? Because in fairness, like, however bad that is for Canada, Ireland are not prolific. They do not create a lot of chances.
No, and one thing, Colm, having seen them, they don't look great on set pieces. That was something that was really coming to the fore in the last 15 minutes with the Irish setup. Set piece deliveries from both sides, I felt was excellent. We obviously, I heard you guys talking the other day about Katie's deliveries. She is excellent, so that could be another way as well. And as I was saying, both sides don't concede too many before, and both sides don't create abundance of chances. So it might have to come down to a set piece. And as boring as it sounds sometimes, I think it's important that that the Irish girls stay in the game, do not let the game become too open. And I don't think that's going to be the case anyway. I think, having watched the Irish side, certainly in the last few years, they don't let the games get away from them. Even if they concede, they'll try to stay in the game and keep it 1-0. And I think that's got to be a good thing. And it's a no-lose game, isn't it? Win, as you said before, there's a huge chance of qualification. Draw, and they're still in the balance, but defeat, and they're probably done. So they have to score in this game. That's the way that the mentality has to be for the Irish side, I feel.
And what a cruel way it would be if we lost to a Christine Sinclair goal, because that actually would also make her another record breaker to score in 6 World Cup finals, along with Martha, the Brazilian. That is ridiculous. Where in Canadian sporting terms is Christine Sinclair respected enough that her CV suggests it should be?
Yeah, I think she feels as though herself, again, there's been a lot of, I mean, you wouldn't have covered it, Cullen, much. I know that you've probably read a little bit around the women's fight with Canadian soccer and the pressure they've had. And the Christine Sinclair, Janine Becky, who worked with us on over in Qatar for the Canadian network TSN, she's injured actually for the World Cup, so she did a cruise ship prior to the tournament. Quinn is another one they had to sit before a government commission. It'd be pretty much similar to the Oireachtas Commission that we saw the FAI having to sit before, and they had to discuss things that went terribly wrong with the game and how they feel they've been mistreated. And Christine Sinclair felt that she was so disrespected by Nick Bontis, where Nick Bontis actually made a comment during one of the meetings about Christine Sinclair. What was Christine bitching about? He said in this meeting, she felt as though that was a huge slur against her. She felt, and she spoke about this during this committee discussion with government officials. She probably has a lot of respect within the game. Her name is probably recognised more so than a lot of the men's footballers before the last few years. Alphonso Davies is probably the most marketable Canadian athlete there is right now globally, aside of any hockey or basketball player. But Christine Sinclair would probably be right up there, marketability for off the field recognition than anything else. I feel than any other probably player that's within that side. So, but again, going back to my point, she probably feels that she doesn't necessarily have that recognition that she probably deserves, and maybe one or two others within that squad probably feel that she deserves as well.
Yeah, it must be so frustrating. It sounds like the Canadian Federation just don't appreciate what they have with an iconic player like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably fair to say, Cullen. Canada Soccer haven't acted well in the last few years. Financially, there's been a lot of problems for both, as I said, for both men and women's teams. The men going into the World Cup over in Qatar had issues. They went on strike last summer prior to the World Cup, and they've had serious issues. And this issue's not been resolved yet. They've not had the bonus system from Qatar actually signed and sorted yet. So the women's team and the men's team were both going for the joint bargaining agreement, which the US were the first team to actually agree. They're trying to go for something similar, but they're just not able to do it because of the financial difficulties that Canada Soccer have right now. It looks as though it's been mismanaged for such a long time. Nick Bontis, who was head of Canada Soccer, has moved on to what I think it's vice president of CONCACAF now. He's moved on, so he's got no issue. He's got no involvement now with Canada Soccer, and it's just been mismanaged. And we can look for honestly the parallels with the FAI. I feel is there for us all to see. Over here, they're obviously up in arms. The players, both men and women, have had disgust with the things that have gone on, but seeing what's happened within the FAI, you can see exactly the same sort of, as I said, the same sort of issues that both federations have had.
What's the outlook towards Ireland heading into this match from the Canadian football perspective?
I think there's a lot of respect actually now. I think they've gained a lot of respect after the Australia game. I think they feel that they know they're going to have to play maybe a certain way. They're going to have to bring the physical side to the game to compete with the Irish girls. But I think, as I said before, coming into the World Cup, they feel as though that they should be recognised as one of the real favourites for this World Cup, and they're probably 10th, 12 favourites for the World Cup, even though they've got that 7th ranking. So they feel as though that they've got a lot to do. They feel as though that they can actually beat this Irish side. They feel confident of beating this Irish side. And I think that that's where the general public feel. They feel as though that they're going to be going deep into this tournament, and they feel as though they're going to be competing later on.
You're probably the perfect person to ask the following question, having seen both sides play. What's your prediction?
My heart's always going to go on my head, so I've always got to go with the Irish girls, and that's the way that it's always going to be with me. And honestly, watching the game, the Canada game, I'm watching the Irish game, I feel as though that there's a big chance. I feel a 1-0 win is on the cards here. I feel a 1-0 win, honestly, for the Irish girls is on the cards here.
We'll clip that, we'll tag you. We'll keep on posting it again and again and again, right up until kick-off. I was interested there, the amount of travel that the women are doing here. So they went from Dublin to Brisbane to Sydney to Perth. It's a long old trek. You yourself had a bit of a journey in 2002 to the World Cup. The 3 group games were in Japan, and the knockout game against Spain was in South Korea. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Right.
Does it have... I know we're talking 21 years later. Does it have a genuine impact in focus and fatigue when it comes to the squad?
I mean, I'd probably spoken about this with many people. I felt actually going to Saipan helped me physically, because when we got back to Japan, I think that because it was so hot when we were in Saipan and everything we were able to do physically out there, I felt as though I felt good when we got back into Japan. So that's something that I felt. That's something that I felt going into that World Cup, actually. So I didn't necessarily feel. I think there was just a buzz around everything going into the World Cup, and that's pretty much something that I felt throughout.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off